Meet this battered young guy right here. That's our main protagonist. He might look like a total wreck at the moment, but don't worry, his glow-up is right around the corner. But the short version of this current scene, he is literally seconds away from dying. His nightmare started because he's a vampire, ruthlessly chased down by a fanatical order of holy knights. After an exhausting cat-and-mouse game, the cold steel of a knight's blade finally tore right through his chest. Derrit, the smug commander leading the raid, sneered down at him. "Hey, bloodsucker, scurrying around in the shadows for 6 whole months. Did you enjoy playing hide-and-seek, you freak? I bet you slaughtered plenty of innocents while you were at. We holy knights carry out divine justice. Your pathetic little tragedy finishes right now. Even the heavens won't pardon your sins. You should feel honored. Dying by my blade is going to win me the glorious title of Vampire Slayer. You dared to mock the church, you spat. And frankly, your pathetic bleeding state speaks for itself." A wicked, twisted grin suddenly spread across Derrit's face. "Oh, by the way, did you realize I let you slip away on purpose? Me deliberately holding back my troops, me letting you run wild all this time? We rarely stumble across a unique catch like you. Dragging out this hunt lined our pockets with serious gold, and making a public spectacle of you sends a fantastic message to the other heretics." Furious, Eugene snapped. He threw himself forward, desperate to strike back. But in this ruthless world, only the strong survive. Absolute power dictates everything. Outmatched and overpowered Eugene had absolutely no choice but to turn and run for his life. A blinding flash of steel ripped through the air, way too fast for him to block. Derrit slashed right through his body, securing a flawless, brutal execution. Derrit stared down at the dying boy with absolute disgust and pure mockery. "Your very existence pollutes our church, a filthy stain on our sacred honor. If I only had one more chance." Gasped Eugene, bolted upright, completely drenched in cold sweat, his body perfectly intact. He gasped for air, his chest heaving, as panic set in. What the hell is going on? His mind spun in dizzy confusion. What just happened? My throat was ripped wide open, but my arms and legs are perfectly fine. I was dead. I know I died. Is this some kind of twisted dream? No, this is the exact same rundown hut I hid in before those fanatics tracked me down. The calendar proved it was 6 months in the past, right before the execution squad launched their massive manhunt. Eugene froze in the shadows of the cave. Did he actually travel back in time? The realization hit him, and he gripped his fists with burning determination. If I really got a second shot at life, he was isolated in a deep, uncharted forest. The closest sign of civilization was Broadwind Village. Eugene had isolated himself here to escape humanity. Back then, he was just a fragile, pathetic vampire, terrified of his own shadow, cowering in the dirt. Even though he despised drinking human blood, his primal instincts had overwhelmed him once in the past, triggering an absolute catastrophe. The very next morning, savage mercenaries flooded the area. 5 days later, the Holy Knights tore the entire village apart searching for him. They didn't care if it took a month or a full year. They were absolutely obsessed with hunting him down. Paralyzed by fear, he had spent 12 miserable years rotting in these woods, surviving solely on wild animal blood. He had no clue why the universe dragged him back to the past for a do-over. But he knew one thing for damn sure. He was never ever going to repeat his pathetic past mistakes. If hiding like a coward just guarantees my death, then I'll become an unstoppable force. So powerful that even when they find me, they won't even leave a scratch. I'm fully embracing my vampiric instincts. The rules of my survival change today. A vampire's true potential unlocks by devouring the life force of others. And the richer the prey's bloodline, the more devastating the power they can steal. There it was. A colossal, bloodthirsty roamer erupted from the depths, the undisputed apex predator of this forest. It lunged with terrifying speed and bone-crushing momentum, leaving Eugene completely defenseless in the blink of an eye. The beast thrashed wildly, violently hurling him across the unforgiving dirt. Scrambling back to his feet, Eugene frantically scanned his grim reality. With this fragile frame, I have to burn every ounce of stamina just to dodge its lethal strikes. But if I can carve out even a single scratch, I'll stand against this monstrosity ready to bleed it entirely dry. In his past life, Eugene survived by blending into the shadows, making himself utterly invisible. But after realizing that cowardice only led to a dead end, all his hesitation vanished. Right here, right now, he craved absolute, overwhelming crack. His blade splintered into useless fragments against its armor-like hide. Seizing the opening, the creature whipped its massive tail, swatting him like a fly. He skipped like a stone across the dirt, launched dozens of feet through the air. The impact was devastating. The ultimate do-or-die moment stared him in the face. As a colossal shadow swallowed him whole, his pupils shrank in sheer terror. Its cavernous jaws snapped open. Did I severely misjudge a roamer's true might? Roamers are just roaming beasts of nature, nowhere near the terrifying fiends of the demon realm. Yet even in mana-starved wastelands, a rare few harbor internal mana stones, treasures that easily dwarf the price of precious diamonds. For these beasts, that glowing stone is their literal beating heart. If he could just pinpoint that core, he could violently flip the script. But the sheer difference in raw stats was suffocating. He had definitely bitten off more than he could chew. This so-called second chance tossed him right into the jaws of the forest's absolute tyrant. It was practically guaranteed to slaughter him before his blade could even graze it. The behemoth plunged into the lake, erupting a violent tidal wave. It dragged Eugene down into the icy depths like a midnight snack, plunging him into suffocating despair. Maybe he grew far too arrogant, foolishly believing that getting one miracle meant a second or third was guaranteed. No, I've never been that damn naive. Suddenly the monster's eyes bulged in raw panic. That's exactly why I always kept my head down. Eugene had struck a nerve, sending blinding agony through its system. Holding my breath, clawing through hell just to breathe, just to survive, I finally chose the path of war. That burning resolve ignited a blinding aura around his entire body. Fight and conquer. If he lost here, the respawns were over. He aggressively dug his hands toward its chest cavity. A single slip-up meant permanent death. He reached deeper, violently hungry, to rip it out. The creature roared, and the pulsating crimson gem materialized right in front of his face. Because true survival means ruthlessly trampling over the blood of others to stay breathing. Following the brutal clash, the lake's surface eerily stilled, until suddenly a blinding radiant flash erupted from the murky depths. The beast's absolutely shredded carcass floated to the top. I swore to myself, if I ever got a do-over, I would never run like a coward again. I would embrace the carnage. The entire aura of the forest shifted into a sinister blood-soaked crimson. So right here, right now, I'm violently ripping away both their lifeblood and my ultimate. Eugene stood in eerie silence, his gaze locked on his newly transformed physique. He cast a cold stare toward the colossal beast's remains, his mind racing. All I needed was the Forest Lord's blood, but my body devoured the Mana Stone as well. The pure energy surging from that crystal. It's infinitely more potent than I anticipated. Its vibrant, pulsing hue was completely foreign to him, radiating from a gem of monstrous proportions. That raw power was now manifesting physically, creeping across his skin like a sleek armor of obsidian scales. This dark armor might actually shield him from the sun, finally letting him walk in broad daylight. He first discovered this forest master back when those ruthless mercenaries held him captive. Back then, the swamp was just an insignificant puddle. No one even realized this monstrosity lurked beneath. But a season of relentless downpours and raging floods completely warped the landscape, drastically expanding its hunt. The beast breached the surface, unleashing absolute hell on the mercenary camp. Amidst the bloody carnage, Eugene managed to steal a mouthful of the wounded forest master's blood. That single taste fueled him enough to slaughter his captors and vanish into the night. Having felt that intoxicating rush, he swore he would return to drain every last drop. Sure, his strength had spiked, but it still wasn't nearly enough to clash blades with Knight Young Durnit. I have to dodge battles I can't survive, at least until victory is a guarantee. That damn Knight Deeret tracks me down no matter where I bury myself. The man must possess some freakish talent for hunting monsters. Or maybe he's tracking my very... So, cowering in the shadows ends now. I need to stockpile enough raw power to rip him apart. But dawn is breaking. Testing this new energy will have to wait. I need to fall back before the sun breaches the horizon. Out of nowhere, an ethereal voice echoed through the mist, instantly snapping his focus. The false ruler has fallen. That vile creature hijacked my domain. He mutated my pristine lake into a festering bog. You delivered him a brutal, agonizing end. I should be thanking you. But how dare you trespass on me and drench this soil in filthy blood? Such a sin is utterly unforgivable. This sanctuary belongs to me, Miriam, the guardian of the lake. The scorching sun will burn you. The very earth will reject you. And I will inflict a curse that shreds your flesh, bone from bone. Then the spirit muttered to herself, not like all my yelling matters. That decrepit, washed-up old vampire probably can't even hear a word I'm saying right. Only truly gifted entities can perceive spirits, and cutting right through her petty rambling, Eugene stared dead ahead. What exactly did my voice just paralyze her? Is she actually blind to me? Eugene narrowed his eyes, repeating his demand. I said, what are you? Miriam flinched, utterly staggered by his piercing gaze. Wait. You're a creature of the Blood Clan, aren't you? Wait then. Did you hear every single thing I just muttered? Yep, she's freaking out about that decrepit, washed-up vampire. No doubt about it. Hastily, the spirit dipped her head in a frantic, awkward bow. I am Miriam, a humble... I used to be the absolute ruler of this basin. But 15 years ago, that overgrown, rotting fish violently usurped my territory, forcing me into absolute servitude. Well, maybe strategic ally sounds a bit better. You see, if the waters turned entirely toxic, the prey would just stop coming. So he practically let me manage the shorelines. Anyway, I owe you everything. With that wretched bottom feeder finally slaughtered, these waters will purify once more. All thanks to your incredible strength. I watched it happen. I swear I saw some withered, pathetic old man get swallowed whole by that giant monster. But right when I assumed he was digested, bam! A massive shockwave ripped through the water, and suddenly this breathtaking... Did you cast some kind of illusion to bait that stupid fish? Seriously, what a flawlessly calculated trap. Completely ignoring Miriam's endless chattering, these ink marks on my skin. They're slowly vanishing. Right. I should definitely be using formal titles with you, huh? Miriam babbled on. That ink on your skin is absolutely stunning. Eugene offered a nonchalant shrug, his voice deadpan. I have no idea. They've just been scarred into my flesh for as long as I can recall. When did this cursed vampire blood even infect my veins? He honestly couldn't scrape up a single memory. As far back as his fractured mind could reach, Eugene had always walked in the shadows, and those 10 distinct symbols had always been burned into his body. Stripped of his true origins, Eugene only understood one brutal reality, a relentless cycle of running for his life, forever too terrified to glimpse the monster he had become. If these markings are actually some kind of ancient spell, did I just trigger one of them today? I am heading out. Keep a close eye on the woods. Miriam pouted, clearly dreading his departure. Wait, it has been ages since I had a real conversation. Are you seriously taking off already? People who can actually see spirits are practically extinct nowadays, and I am dying of boredom here. It would be so wonderful to just have a chat. Eugene quickly steered the ferry back to reality. Shouldn't you be focusing on purifying this toxic swamp back into a crystal clear lake? The spirit groaned clearly, dodging the chore. Ugh. Do you have any? Oh, honey, a gorgeous guy like you needs to hydrate with some premium crystal clear water. I am a water elemental after all. I can whip up the most refreshing drink you have ever tasted. Gulp down some of my purified water, and your skin will absolutely glow. Watching the spirit eagerly conjure a floating puddle, Eugene instantly backed away. Let's move. Stop messing around. He commanded the spirit to scram. But as he turned on his heel, the fairy desperately clung to his sleeve. Wait, I swear I can purify any water for you. Eugene ripped his arm free. Hard pass. But Miriam relentlessly chased after him, scolding him that he should just accept the gift. My lord, you are literally part of the vampire clan now. Fast forward a few days. The village of Broadwind slept beneath a peaceful moon, until a panicked scout shattered the silence. Chief, get out here! The crimson-eyed beast is back! The old man blinked, completely thrown off. Wait, what? Soon the entire settlement swarmed around the town square, their jaws hitting the dirt. Gasps of pure joy erupted from the crowd. Holy smokes! Look at all those wild boars! We are having a feast. This is a massive haul, hey Chief. There is way more meat than he usually drops off. Are we really? A bewildered teenager tugged at the elder's sleeve. Chief, what exactly goes through that monster's head? He normally just drops off a single carcass when the moon is full. The elder grasped the strange timing, even if the motive baffled him. The creature was completely off schedule. The townsfolk swapped whispers about their mysterious benefactor. A bizarre, solitary figure lurking at the foot of the mountain. A phantom they simply dubbed the Red-Eyed Beast. He had shadowed their borders for over a decade, without shedding a single drop of human blood. Quite the opposite, whenever the full moon crested, he would drag in fresh game to feed the struggling families. Yet nobody could crack the enigma behind his charity. Then Eugene stepped forward with an unexpected plea. Mind if I step inside the perimeter for a moment? Over 10 years ago, when this phantom first materialized, he sparked absolute terror. But after a decade of steady food deliveries and zero violence, the paranoia had completely melted away. This bizarre, unspoken alliance had spanned 10 long years. Now the locals practically treated him like an eccentric neighbor. Still, it had been an eternity since anyone actually laid eyes on him. Is there something on your mind? The elder asked. Eugene slowly tugged off his hood, his voice steady. I kept my distance for years because I was battling a severe affliction. But after all that time in isolation, the sickness has fully faded. I just wanted to clear the air. Your people have shown me so much quiet grace, and it is finally time I pay that debt. If this town ever runs into danger, just say the word, and I will be there. The second the moonlight hit his uncovered features, a collective gasp ripped through the crowd. Wait, who was this? The villagers stared, utterly paralyzed by the breathtakingly handsome man standing in the dirt. He radiated a flawless, almost ethereal beauty that left them dizzy. This gorgeous guy was the terrifying, red-eyed beast. People rubbed their eyes in sheer shock. Was this forest freak actually a half-demon, or some high-born aristocrat in disguise? He had hidden behind a mask for years, concealing a face carved like an absolute masterpiece. Later, Miriam bubbled up from the shadows, utterly baffled. Eugene, did you seriously just dump all your hard-earned kills on those humans? What is going through your head? Aren't vampires supposed to be all about endless bloodshed, slaughter, and pure terror? Eugene just sighed, brushing off her logic. That is not how it works. Out here in the mortal world, building a network is everything. I am just laying down some goodwill. The spirit crossed her tiny arms, refusing to buy it. Wait, you are going to mingle with livestock and not even take a bite? You literally... So why even waste your time playing nice with them? He tossed his mask aside, his gaze darkening as he peered into the future. I convinced myself their fate had nothing to do with me. I was dead wrong. There is a bloodbath coming, and I refuse to just sit back and watch it unfold. Once those mercenaries raid this valley, they are going to slaughter every last soul here. Miriam shrieked, "Wait, what?" But Eugene's mind was already drifting back to that one specific kid. He whispered their true motive. They infiltrated Broadwind to snatch a young boy for the Lord's stronghold. And to cover their tracks, they planned to slaughter the entire town. If left unchecked, this bloodbath will inevitably drag the Holy Crusader Knights right to our doorstep. Doubt gnawed at him. Was Eugene actually telling the truth? If so, how on earth did he predict this nightmare? Every last soul in this village will be wiped out. I've shadowed Eugene for days, yet the guy remains a total mystery. What exactly goes on inside his head? As for Eugene, only time will expose his true colors. I guess we just have to wait and see. But first things first. We need to win over the locals, prove to them that I'm not a threat. Utterly confused, Miriam tilted her head. Wait, what does butchering mercenaries have to do with gaining their trust? Not watching her step, she crashed headfirst right into his solid frame. Clutching her bruised nose, Miriam whined, "Ow! That hurt like crazy." She glared up at him. "Why did you just slam on the brakes?" The answer lay just up the dirt road. A heavily armed squad of guards was marching straight toward them, looking for blood. The thugs immediately began muttering. "Who the hell is that? The freak looks like he just crawled out of the settlement. What's the play here? We're supposed to infiltrate the town quietly. That pretty boy isn't even packing steel, and he's completely alone. Still, if the brat screams, it'll blow our cover." Deciding quickly, one brute hoisted a heavy axe and charged, aiming to silence him before a single sound escaped. Panic gripped Miriam. Eugene runs. The massive thug launched himself into the air, perfectly positioned to deliver a lethal, skull-crushing strike. Right then, Eugene's eyes ignited with a brilliant, sinister crimson, living up to his terrifying title as the red-eyed monster. With a casual, effortless flick of his wrist, he erased the attacker from existence. Pure, unadulterated terror washed over the remaining guards' faces. Words weren't even necessary. "Miriam, use your brain," he murmured coldly. "Why exactly do you think I need to win the locals over?" I stepped up to handle this garbage quietly to avoid drawing heat. Because tonight, I am wiping these mercenaries off the map. Suddenly, the freezing twilight air was completely shattered by a spine-chilling guttural shriek. Holy crap, the guy's a bloodsucker. He's a freaking vampire. Bayo lunged forward like a rabid dog, swinging his broadsword with insane power. A vampire. Why run? This was an absolute jackpot. If they dragged him to the church alive, they'd be swimming in gold. But reality had a much darker punchline waiting. Out of nowhere, a terrifying surge of energy deflected the lethal tip like an impenetrable wall of glass. A cold sweat broke over Bio as he stared directly into Eugene's dead, predatory glare. Without uttering a single syllable, Eugene drove a devastating, bone-shattering punch straight into Bayo's gut. Yet drunk on battle lust, the arrogant brute just scoffed. He might be a walking corpse, but he packs a hell of a punch. I'm dragging his dead weight back for the bounty. Completely unbothered, Eugene casually twirled his blade, while the fool continued to run his mouth. "This monster's bounty is all mine." But before the words fully left his lips, Eugene laid him out flat in a fraction of a second. Enraged, another lunatic sprinted forward, thrusting a jagged spear. "Die, you demon! Back off! Don't just charge in blind, you idiot," a comrade screamed from the rear. But the manic fighter, his face twisted in absolute fury, just roared, "I'll tear you to pieces." Yet Eugene caught the brutal thrust dead in its tracks. His rough, armored hands gripped the steel, even as his own palms bled profusely. Cold dread washed over the attacker. He stared, completely paralyzed. How the hell did you stop that?" Eugene just stared back. Those piercing blood-red irises glowed in the shadows, radiating a suffocating, demonic aura. Darkness was rapidly swallowing the sky, and in a literal flash, Eugene's blade carved cleanly right through the madman's chest, sending a gruesome arc of crimson spraying across the dirt. Without a single shred of pity, he planted his heavy boot directly onto the dying man's face, grinding him into the earth. Standing over a field of broken, agonizingly screaming mercenaries, Eugene finally broke his silence. "And the night," his voice dropped to an icy, deadpan whisper, "is the absolute perfect time to hide the blood." Pure panic rippled through the ranks as they screamed at each other to hold the line. "Don't just rush him," one roared. "He's an absolute freak of nature. Take him down together." Crimson flames roared to life, violently illuminating the suffocating darkness of the forest. Blood completely drained from the mercenaries' faces as they stammered out a single, terrified word. "Impossible." Dozens of mutilated corpses littered the scorched earth, twisting in the shadows of the roaring inferno. Just what kind of absolute massacre went down? Was this entirely the work of that crimson-eyed demon? Did you orchestrate this bloodbath? They demanded. Eugene's demonic, ruby-red eyes narrowed as he smoothly delivered his alibi. Hardly. I just stumbled onto this absolute tragedy on my way back from a hunt. I was just out inspecting my snare lines. By the time I actually got here, they were already shredded to pieces. It seriously looks like this miserable squad got bushwhacked on their way to Broadwin Village. And their executioners a pack of wild wolves. Gasps of pure disbelief echoed around the clearing. Following his gaze, they stared down at massive, pitch-black beasts, their horrifying shadow wolves. Eugene didn't even blink, his voice ice-cold. They were completely starved. I simply waited until they were too busy ripping into the corpses to notice me. I managed to slaughter a handful, as you can clearly tell. But initially the pack vastly outnumbered these dead guys. The ones that bolted. They're probably still stalking us right now. The squad leader narrowed his eyes, practically radiating suspicion. Those hellhounds are the absolute deadliest predators in this entire territory. How the hell did... Are we entirely positive that crimson-eyed psycho didn't actually stage this whole thing? Panicked shouts instantly interrupted the standoff. Chief, look! There are massive claw gouges over here too. The beasts absolutely ripped them to shreds. Eugene smirked internally. He knew damn well a shadow wolf pack, no matter how savage, would never dare ambush a fully armed platoon. But before anyone else could connect the dots, the commander sighed. My apologies for jumping to conclusions, the leader muttered. Eugene shrugged it off with terrifying indifference. Don't sweat it. Anyone could easily make that mistake. So what's the play with these corpses? Eugene prodded. I definitely wasn't just going to let them rot out here. Which is exactly why I gave you a heads up. The village elder shook his head grimly. We absolutely cannot leave. Miriam leaned, and her voice barely a hushed breath. Eugene is literally everything that comes out. The truth was way darker. After Eugene systematically butchered the strike force, the overwhelming stench of fresh gore once he finished mopping the floor with his enemies, the absolute madman literally gouged fake bite marks into the corpses, just to sell his fabricated fairy tale. Sure, fabricating an alibi was undeniably smart, but why go to such psychotic lengths just to keep his hands looking totally clean? If he had just ghosted the scene immediately, he could have completely dodged this entire headache. But then again, running away would only paint a massive target. No, this was undeniably deliberate. The guy was clearly playing a completely different game of... Oh right, one more thing, Eugene chimed in casually. I patted down their pockets to see who they actually were, and I stumbled across this little gem. Looks like some sort of official mercenary dispatch. Care to take a look? Miriam practically screamed internally. Hell yes, they definitely needed to read that. The parchment was clearly stamped with the unmistakable crest of Lord Tian. The elder's hands shook as he unrolled it. What in the world is this? As his eyes frantically skimmed the ink, a dead cold sweat broke out across the chief's forehead. Wait, is this actually real, Field? Is the boy named Field still living here in town? The crowd immediately buzzed with eager confusion. Spill it, Chief. What does it actually say? Yeah, the kid is definitely still around. What the hell is actually going... Dropping an absolute bombshell, the elder bellowed that little Field was highly likely the bastard son of Lord Tian himself. And this completely butchered hit squad, they were clearly dispatched to drag the boy back. Shockwaves instantly ripped through the crowd, igniting an absolute frenzy of breathless gossip. Are you seriously kidding me? That dirt poor... Cutting back to the absolute bloodbath, Komiya could only watch, utterly suffocating on his own terror, as thick arcs of crimson painted the air. It was straight out of a brutal nightmare. This lone psycho had single-handedly decimated an entire, heavily armed... If we don't do something right now, he's absolutely going to butcher every last one of us. Stop pissing yourselves and fight back. He might be a literal freak, but he still bleeds like a man. Stop feeding him one by one. Completely box the bastard in. Eugene's face was completely caked in grime and gore, his battered body shaking under the intense strain. His face was an absolute mess of blood and dirt, his wounded body violently shaking as his escape routes vanished. And out of nowhere, this absolute savage just materialized. Komiya frantically tracked every single bone-crushing swing of Eugene's blade, desperately throwing his own body on the line just to survive the brutal onslaught. But in that terrifying split second, those piercing, demonic red eyes violently snapped onto Komiya, completely locking him. Faster than a striking viper, Eugene absolutely buried a gut-wrenching punch deep into Komiya's stomach, completely shattering his stance. The sheer raw force launched him violently through the air, his spine completely colliding with a massive oak. A deeply sickening crack echoed like Eugene flattened Komiya into the dirt, then closed the distance in a flash. The defeated man clawed at the ground, whimpering like a kicked dog. Stop. Please hold on, don't do it. Were you ambushing us this whole time? Why are you even coming after my men? We just had a simple job in that little settlement right over the ridge. Eugene loomed over him, his gaze sharp enough to cut glass. I just wanted to know what business you had in my territory. That village is under my protection. The mercenary's eyes brimmed with desperate tears as he pleaded. Look, I'm so sorry. I had no clue a bloodlord was running this place. I swear to God we aren't here hunting vampires. There is a bastard son from the Cheon bloodline stashed away out there. Everyone thought he vanished, but he's been laying low in your town. We literally just came to track him down. Eugene's tone turned eerily flat. You're a terrible liar. What's the actual objective? You wouldn't drag an entire army out here for one kid. Were you planning to slaughter the whole settlement? Komiya shrieked in absolute terror. No, wait, it's not like that. The truth is the main Tian household didn't give us the contract. We were paid off by the official heirs under the table, Chimera and Bertel Tien. It's gotta be some nasty succession war. We were strictly told to snatch the bastard kid. Rolling deep with this many guys was just an insurance policy, just in case things went south. Please, man, let me walk away. Hearing that name, Eugene ground his teeth so hard his jaw ached. Bertel was definitely pulling the strings behind the scenes. Bertel Tien, the ruthless captain of the vampire hunters. He used to report directly to Eugene's old comrade in arms. Bertel wouldn't be stupid enough to explicitly order a village massacre. These grunts were probably getting greedy, taking it upon themselves, but that exact bloodbath is what dragged the Holy Knights into this mess. Wiping an entire settlement off the map gave them the perfect excuse to deploy an army to investigate. The mercenary shook violently, stuttering, We just saw a chance to pocket some extra coin, that's all. If we had any idea the Bloodlord was running this turf, we would have never stepped foot here. Never. Eugene soaked it all in silence. He calmly dusted off his trench coat, pivoting to walk away. But right before he stepped off, he tossed, Fair enough. Keep an eye out for the wolves on your trek home. Komiya shivered, the color totally drained from his face. Are you really letting me go? Oh man, Who could have predicted that a split second later Eugene's blade would cleanly slice through his throat, sending a crimson fountain spraying into the air? Miriam smirked, crossing her arms. What's the logic in letting one guy walk after slaughtering? Eugene wiped his weapon. The moment I expose my fangs, I leave 0 survivors. He shifted his gaze off into the dark tree line, where glowing eyes emerged from the shadows. The local wolf pack had caught the fresh metallic scent. Meanwhile, back at the settlement, the locals were cornering their elder. Is the rumor real? The old chief let out a heavy sigh. Yes, those sellswords were essentially an armed detail hired to drag Felid back to the capital. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Felid, the lonely orphan boy from last year, but he washed up here 8 years ago. Wait, you don't think? The chief rubbed his temples. The extraction team meant for Felid just got entirely wiped out by wild beasts. What in the world are we supposed to? Eugene casually stepped into the firelight. So you're trying to ship this kid Felid all the way to the central capital? The elder nodded vigorously. Yes, exactly right. Eugene didn't miss a beat. Well, if a heavily armed crew couldn't handle the local wildlife, I can step in. I've survived in these woods for ages. I can weave the boy right through the predator hunting grounds and drop him off at the city gate. The old man's jaw practically hit the floor. You'd honestly take Felid yourself. We couldn't possibly dump that massive burden on you. Eugene offered a disarming, saintly smile, perfectly hiding his lethal nature. Please, it's no trouble. A true knight can never ignore a cry for help. Miriam aggressively whispered from the sidelines. Eugene, you are so incredibly full of crap. Suddenly, Miriam's eyes blew wide open, her face freezing as if she'd just seen a ghost. The surrounding locals simultaneously mirrored her absolute shock, staring, slack-jawed. Someone in the back unconsciously pointed and blurted out, "Whoa, hey." A new figure stepped forward. He parted his lips, delivering a perfectly polite, aristocratic smile as he made his entrance. "Greetings, I am Yan Eugene, representing the noble Eugene bloodline." Someone instantly barked back, "Like hell anyone is buying that." Eugene's bold introduction sent shockwaves through the terrified villagers. This red-eyed freak was an aristocrat. Watch your mouth, you're crossing a major line. You need to address him as my lord. Miriam leaned close, hissing a sharp warning. Eugene, I know you have to spin a web, but this is way too far. He merely smirked, soaking in their sheer panic. These backwater folks had never laid eyes on high society. Out here in the middle of nowhere, a mysterious boy crawling out of the haunted woods and claiming a royal title sparked absolute chaos. Even if I fake this whole blue blood persona, they don't have a clue how to spot a fraud. Their terrified gazes quickly melted into starry-eyed awe. Lord Yan Eugene, were you actually a knight? Why vanish into those dark woods for over a decade? Were you recovering from brutal battle scars? Is this some secret hardcore knight's training? He offered a smooth, shadowy half-truth. Due to certain complicated circumstances, I severed all human ties to survive in those shadows. The crowd erupted into wild cheers. That makes total sense ever since you hauled in those relief supplies you carried, a totally different aura. With the lethal skills of an elite warrior, surviving solo out there is basically a walk in the park, right? The wrinkled village chief stepped forward, his voice trembling. But our lands are completely barren. We have absolutely nothing to offer you in return. Eugene's tone dropped into a, I just need a place to catch my breath and wash off this bone-deep exhaustion. Would it be all right if I stayed in the village tonight? A massive grin split the chief's face. Nonsense. That's the absolute least we can do. Our huts are a bit cramped, but please, make yourself at home. The wide-open space beneath the crystal-clear sky felt incredibly refreshing. Eugene simply stared off into the horizon, his dark eyes locked on an unseen future. Letting his monstrous instincts bleed through, the bloodlord grazed his twisted claws against the cold stone wall. This terrifying physical upgrade was a dark gift granted by the ruler of the woods. His piercing stare, gleaming like a pair of cursed blood-red rubies, was enough to send violent shivers down anyone's spine. That grotesque, inhuman hand continued trailing ominously along the rough surface. Now wrapped in pitch-black scales, his flesh could finally tolerate the scorching daylight. That alone would make this brutal journey a whole lot easier. Miriam snapped at him in disgust. You dumb bloodsucker, what the hell are you playing at with these massive lies? You, a noble knight? Can you even read a damn book? Eugene offered a quick, careless shrug. Sure, maybe this house of cards crashes down eventually, but I'm skipping town soon anyway. So who cares? It doesn't matter. Miriam narrowed her eyes. Now drop the act and tell me, what is your actual endgame? You've been lurking like a ghost out there for ages. Why suddenly play the hero buddy up with these peasants and take on this job? Just then a voice echoed across the dirt road. My lord, everything is prepped. We can hit the road whenever you're ready. He leaned in, whispering back to Miriam. Look at that. In a single night, I've locked down. People naturally bow to authority over logic. You can spin the craziest tales imaginable, but when you slap a fancy title on it, you can crush 100 messy excuses into one undeniable truth. Granted, only this gullible backwater town would swallow a rushed scam like that. Actual high society wouldn't fall for this garbage for a second. So starting right now, I'm going to forge that dirty lie into stone-cold reality. Channeling the same heroic charm that originally won over these peasants, he flashed a brilliant, blinding smile. Just in case anyone dares to doubt Lord Eugene's prestige, I took the liberty of drafting a formal letter of introduction. That boy Felid. Please watch his back out there. Eugene gripped the paper, knowing that by using raw, brute strength to force these fables into facts, the entire world would eventually have no choice but to believe. A timid boy named Felid shuffled forward, his face flushed red. I'm Felid. It's an absolute honor to serve you. Eugene analyzed his chessboard. To make his tangled web of deceit unshakable, he desperately needed to climb the social ladder. Eugene locked eyes with him. So you're Feel. I am Yan Eugene. Good to have you on board. His mind was already racing, plotting the exact bloody steps required to seize a jet. High above the dense emerald canopy, the morning sky stretched out perfectly flawless. The duo trudged wearily out of the dusty settlement. Glancing back, Eugene asked out of nowhere, "Bromes, huh?" Pointing at the faded wooden sign, Felid nodded. "Yes, sir. That's the name of the town." Eugene raised an eyebrow. "Wait, you can actually read?" The kid scratched his neck awkwardly. "Yeah, my mom taught me the alphabet before she passed away. She was just a commoner, so she never had a chance at real schooling. But she always told me she learned to read from the only man she ever truly loved. Who would have guessed that guy was actually the legendary Lord Cheon?" Miriam playfully whispered right in his ear. "Well then, perfect timing. Make him teach you how to read." Without skipping a beat, Eugene fired off the question. "Can you teach me to read?" His sudden request completely blinds. "Wait me. But you're a knight. You seriously don't know your letters?" Eugene just offered a quiet, self-deprecating, "Knight is just an empty title now. My family fell into ruin ages ago, so there is zero glory left to claim. I don't survive by reading dusty scrolls. I survive by the edge of my blade." Philip blinked, the puzzle pieces clicking together. Wait. A heavy, suffocating silence hung in the air. Eugene didn't say a word, but that quiet pause screamed a confession. "Go ahead, keep doubting me," Eugene thought. "Eventually that doubt will morph into blind faith. And once I lock down his trust, it will be thick enough to bury all my twisted little lies." Floating right beside him, Miriam flashed a wicked smirk. "Oscar-worthy performance right there, buddy. Play it how you want, but spin too many webs and you are bound to trigger some major red flags." Though judging by that look in his eyes, the kid is totally buying it. Philip finally broke the tension, his voice hesitant. "Listen, I am so sorry. I honestly doubted you. At one second you were calling yourself a monster, and the next you were claiming noble blood. The whole village treats you like some kind of beast, so I definitely judged you way too early. But from now on, I will trust my own eyes instead of cheap gossip. Honestly, growing up in a hardcore martial arts family, skipping book club totally makes sense. So you don't catch any heat from anyone else. I will gladly tutor you whenever we get some downtime." Philip's tone softened with genuine curiosity. "Please, tell me everything about Lord..." But out of absolutely nowhere, swish, a lethal throwing dagger sliced through the air, aimed dead center at Philip's eyeball. The kid's face went ghost white as a terrified scream ripped from his throat. In a split second, a terrifying beast-like aura erupted to intercept the deadly blade, saving Philip by a razor-thin margin. A pack of rogue hunters stepped out from the shadows, cackling wildly. "I told you to yank it hard, just like I taught you," one barked. "Hey, I did exactly what you..." Dripping with cold sweat and trembling like a leaf, Philip choked out, Are we being robbed?" The lead thug flashed a rotten grin. "What, never been mugged before, kid? That priceless look on your face is making my day. Now strip everything down and make it snappy. Drop your gear and dump the bags. You drag your feet, you lose your heads. Are we clear?" Eugene didn't utter a single syllable. Instead, he swung his heavy blade in a blinding, brutal arc right through the thug's neck. The bandit's severed head sailed through the air, his hair trailing behind like a gruesome ribbon, leaving his crew frozen in absolute shock. Philip stared down at the decapitated skull hitting the dirt, completely paralyzed by the horrific reality. One of the remaining thugs whipped around, shrieking at the top of his lungs. "Boss!" Flicking the blood from his steel, Eugene deadpanned. "I followed your orders. That was pretty quick and tidy, right?" Roaring with blind fury, another bandit hoisted his battle axe. You crazy son of a... But before he could finish, Eugene carved him down in a single devastating strike. A crimson fountain erupted, painting the forest floor. With just a few surgically precise slashes, Eugene sent the entire crew packing straight to the afterlife. The last surviving straggler scrambled backward, squealing like a cornered rat. Somebody help! Please help! But Eugene towered over him, his face utterly merciless, pressing his blood-soaked steel right against the man's throat. A ruthless thrust plunged straight through the bandit's ribcage, freezing time itself for a terrifying second. With the massacre over, Eugene calmly strolled through the fresh graveyard, nudging the mangled corpses. I will never understand this pathetic human instinct to murder and steal the second they spot easy prey, he muttered. He twisted his blade deeper into the last thug's lifeless chest. Do they seriously believe weakness gives them a free pass to terrorize others? Philip, if you read enough books, do you eventually understand this kind of garbage? The boy shivered violently as he tried to answer. A heartbeat later, thick, dark gore geysered out from the bandit's chest wound in a horrific display. Raising a hand to cover his mouth, Eugene murmured in a dangerously low whisper. You told me you were going to trust your own eyes, right? Whether you believe in me or not is entirely your call. But I promise you this. I won't let a single drop. The scene hard cuts to the vibrant, chaotic energy of the local village. A massive crowd swarmed the dirt roads, completely drowning the air in a chorus of screaming merchants. Step right up! We've got incredibly rare herbs, freshly harvested from the frigid northern hunts. Just 20 coins a bundle. Nearby, a fierce argument broke out. They're charging half that price down the road, a customer yelled. The shopkeeper scoffed. Don't be absurd. My merchandise is top tier. Miriam took in the bustling bazaar, his voice quivering with pure thrill. This is incredible. It's a gold mine of bizarre treasure. Philip abruptly leaned in. Sir, if you're going to buy anything in this place, watch your back. He lowered his voice. I've shadowed my master through these stalls before. These vendors are absolute swindlers. They'll fleece you blind. They always slap my master with outrageous markups. Right on cue, another shopper bellowed, Hey, that guy's selling it for half price. Hand over my refund. Eugene scanned the chaotic market. Honestly, he needed to make some cash before he could even afford to get scammed. He strolled right up to that newly vacated counter. Hold on a sec, all right? He told Philip. Slamming his haul onto the wooden table, Eugene locked eyes with the merchant. Hey, boss. I'm offloading some pelts. Give me a fair appraisal. The vendor spun around as curiosity piqued. Well, well. Black wolf skins. You don't see a stash like this every day. Where exactly did you dig these up? Batu's eyes narrowed, sizing the newcomer up with calculated caution. The stranger's heavy, enveloping black cloak practically begged for deeper scrutiny. Glancing at the frayed edges peeking out from the hem, Batu silently deduced this guy was no fellow trader, just another desperate drifter. A greedy smirk tugged at the merchant's lips. Time to bleed him dry. Putting on his best theatrical sigh, Batu clicked his tongue. Yikes, these pelts are chewed to pieces. What am I supposed to do with this junk? I can give you 18 silver. Tops. From the shadows of the dark hood, a pair of piercing blood-red eyes flared to life, burning a hole straight through the merchant. A sudden chill crawled up Batu's spine. His gaze flickered nervously. Wait, what the heck? Why are his eyes glowing like actual blood? His bravado instantly crumbling, Batu stammered out. Actually, considering how incredibly rare black wolves are, I suppose I could bump up the offer a little. Eugene didn't utter a single syllable. That unblinking crimson glare sent buckets of cold sweat pouring down Batu's back. Just scream at me if you're mad. Squeaking out a pathetic forced chuckle, the merchant backpedaled. Clearly you're a first-timer here. You drive a hard bargain, friend. Let's make it 23 coins. A suffocating beat of silence passed. Okay, fine. Eugene merely hummed a low, vibrating note, watching the merchant frantically scramble to inflate the payout. Oh, wait, no. Not 25. Philip stood there, absolutely floored. Eugene rumbled another low hum. Utterly terrified, the merchant squeaked, 28 coins. Eugene dragged out a chilling, rumbling sigh, his glowing red eyes radiating pure, suffocating dominance. Absolute panic seized Batu. Is this freak going to squeeze every last penny out of my damn register? Throwing his hands up in defeat, he wailed, 30 coins! That is my absolute limit. Philip's jaw practically unhinged, hitting the floor. Without missing a beat, Eugene coolly replied, Deal. Darkness draped over the city. Inside, flickers of warm candlelight danced across the walls. Eugene stared down at the parchment, squinting at the incredibly wobbly characters he'd scribbled. He'd picked up the bare essentials from Philip, but actual literacy was still light years away. Rigid, ancient-looking strokes marched in sloppy lines across the weathered page. The water spirit chimed in, perking up from the desk. Hey, not too shabby. It floated closer. A proper vampire should honestly be dripping in fine silk, but hey, this gear was still a total. Eugene smirked, thoroughly pleased with himself. Despite all the warnings, that market was surprisingly generous. The guy even threw in a hefty newcomer bonus. Miriam smothered a giggle behind his hand. You really are such an easy target for these merchants. Flashing back to the greedy vendors sweating out those frantic price bumps, Eugene's eyes glinted with the sweet thrill of profit. The spirit exclaimed, Honestly, you should have just bullied him harder and scored some premium luxury silk. Brushing off the critique, Eugene simply stated, I just need enough fabric to keep the sun off my back. Miriam gasped in pure horror, rambling on. What? You gotta actually live a little. Have you seriously just been rotting away in the woods this whole time? The lifestyle he pictured was dripping with outrageous wealth. A true vampire should live like royalty, kicking back in some massive moonlit fortress, draped in fine silk, surrounded by drunk servants, and sipping on freshly spilled blood. You need some serious ambition if you want to move up in the world. Eugene cut him off. Hold on, you literally live in a swamp. How would you know any of this? Miriam fired back. I reside in the spirit realm, thank you very much. Every now and then surface elders swing by and drop all kinds of juicy gossip. He pressed on, look. As long as you avoid taking a silver blade or a wooden stake to the heart, you are easily clocking 200 years on this earth. So educate yourself. Master the ancient imperial alphabet. Eugene arched an eyebrow. Can you even read? Miriam deadpanned. Nope. Eugene sighed. Aside from brewing drinks, what exactly are you good for? Suddenly, Philip's voice echoed through the trees. Sir, the kid looked completely exhausted as he squinted. Who exactly are you talking to? Eugene smoothly pivoted. Just thinking out loud. You holding up all right? Philip rubbed his neck. I am so sorry you had to see me break down like that, right in the middle of prepping the rabbit. My brain just dragged me right back to this morning. The flash of that bandit getting slaughtered right in front of me. It totally wrecked my stomach. Miriam shrugged. Guess it was a bit too hardcore for the little guy. Eugene waved it off. Hey, it's totally fine. Normal folks don't just get used to the sight of gore overnight. Shaking it off, Philip piped up. But don't worry, I still got plenty of gas in the tank. We have the whole night ahead of us. A bright grin flashed across his face as he tapped a quill against a fresh parchment. We have plenty of paper. I will teach you how to write until your hand cramps up. And so, buried under the quiet blanket of night, the two hunched over the crisp sheets, totally locked in. Out of nowhere, Eugene muttered, Is picking up an alphabet seriously this easy? Philip beamed. No, that is just because you are a straight-up genius, sir. He went on. It took me months to get it down, and regular folks usually need a whole year. Eugene smirked. Now you are just buttering me up. Eugene leaned back. Philip, you sure about all this? If you really want to climb the ranks, just knowing how to read and write won't cut it, especially since you are bound to hit noble status any day now. The kid's shoulders slumped, his eyes dropping to the dirt. He stammered, I really don't know. Mom never gave me the full rundown, and honestly, I try not to think about it. The whole thing just feels like a crazy dream. A hollow, lost look washed over Philip's face. Honestly, I didn't even expect Lord Tian to open his doors for me. Just then, heavy footsteps crunched in the distance. A squad of strangers marched up, with one guy stepping out from. He flashed a friendly grin. Evening, fellas. We're just hunting for a place to crash. Mind if we pick your brains for a second? Eugene's eyes discreetly scanned the crew. heavy-duty weapons, plated armor, and an entire carriage in tow. These guys were miles apart from the trashy mercenaries they had run into earlier. These were absolute pros. Another voice chimed in. "Oh wow, you guys even have a kid with you. Care to share where you two are heading out to?" Eugene casually adjusted his mask. This was standard merc interrogation. If he stuttered now, he would instantly paint a target on their backs. Cool as ice, he fired back. "We are making our way to Lord Tian's estate." The man lit up. "No way us two mind if we crash your camp. We brought plenty of booze, fresh water, and roast lamb." Suddenly a bratty voice cut through the dark, and a blonde kid strutted forward. "Captain Pardek, why are we even asking? We are pitching our tents here. Not like they can stop us right." Beneath the mask, Eugene's crimson eyes narrowed into a lethal glare. The captain quickly jumped in to do damage control. "Hey, my bad, Rabin here is fresh meat to the squad, and the kid clearly hasn't learned his damn manners yet. Cut him some slack." He tapped his chest. "Name is Pardek, and who might you be?" Eugene's deadpan response. "A knight," threw the captain entirely off guard. "Wait." Rabin barked out a laugh. "Captain Pardek, you seriously buying this crap? Look at this tramp. You call yourself a knight? No warhorse, zero armor. Give me a break." The blonde punk stepped right into his personal space, sneering. "Cut the bull. You're no knight, are you?" He jabbed a finger directly at him, demanding, "Eugene of what family? I've never heard that name before." "Some kind of fake," he scoffed with total confidence. That single accusation struck a nerve, instantly casting a dark, lethal shadow over the swordsman's face. His murderous glare looked ready to slaughter the fool standing right in front of him. Eugene reasoned that since he had already told Philip the truth, spinning a new lie now was completely out of the question. These hired blades definitely didn't confront them for idle chatter. Keeping his mouth tightly shut, he carefully sized up the situation. Knight or no knight, if these thugs kept pushing for answers, things were going to get incredibly messy. Crimson irises locked onto the threat. He quickly calculated their numbers. A small crew, he could easily wipe them all out. Slipping his hand quietly beneath his heavy mantle, Eugene braced his grip to unsheath his blade. Suddenly a piercing glare shot from the back of the group, followed by a furious roar. "Rabin!" A brutal backhand cracked violently across the loudmouth's jaw. The sheer force sent Rabin ragdolling across the dirt until a thick tree trunk brutally stopped his momentum. Bending into a stiff 90-degree bow, Pardek practically begged. "My deepest apologies, Sir Eugene. Please forgive the sheer stupidity of our rookie." Shooting a brief glance at the crumpled boy, Eugene smoothly responded, "No need to apologize. Just go set up your camp." Letting out a massive sigh of relief, the captain hurriedly answered, "Thank you for your immense mercy." Internally, Eugene realized this little incident. To shake off these useless suspicions, he needed to officially secure his knighthood as fast as humanly possible. With the tension broken, he settled back down beside Philip to examine the mysterious letters from afar. Meanwhile, Rabin remained completely sprawled out in the dirt. When he finally snapped back to reality, utter shock washed. Scrambling to his feet, he stuttered, What was that for?" Sitting nearby, Pardek just clicked his tongue. "Tisk, tisk. You absolute moron." His brow furrowed deeply as he hissed, "Do you have a death wish? How dare you blindly provoke a knight like that?" The rookie's jaw dropped, leaving him completely lost for words. Realizing the thick-headed kid still wasn't getting it, Captain Pardek smacked the back of his head again. "Good Lord, kid. You are only breathing right now because I stepped in. You nearly got every single one of us butchered back there." Rabin massaged the throbbing knot on his skull. "Seriously, what's so terrifying about that scruffy drifter? He's just hauling around a busted practice sword. Are you really brain-dead enough to judge purely by appearances?" Pardek barked. "You must. Did you even process the sheer value of that knight's cape?" he pressed. "That was top-tier craftsmanship, woven straight from premium wolf pelts. Even the most basic silk lining on that thing easily costs over 10 coins. The rookie's eyes bulged in shock. "That pricey?" Pardek shot back. "Yeah, easily 3 solid months of your measly paycheck." Back at the camp, Eugene was hyper-focused on deciphering his text. completely unaware of the wild conclusions the captain was drawing. Plus, the guy is casually reading documents. He's clearly educated, definitely not some common peasant off the streets. Pardek shot daggers at his subordinate, growling, "He was a split second away from pulling out a real blade. We were standing right at death's door. If we were lucky, maybe just me and one other guy would have made it out alive." Tipping his head like a clueless pup, the boy asked, "How could you pop?" The captain's mind flashed back to the tense standoff. "While you were flapping your gums, that knight stealthily slipped his right hand deep inside his mantle, and my sharp eyes caught his left foot subtly sliding into a rear combat stance. That is the textbook mark of an absolute master, perfectly aligning his center of gravity with the trajectory of a lethal slash." A vivid, chilling phantom of cold steel cleanly severing Rabin's throat flashed in the veteran's mind. Dragging a finger menacingly across his own windpipe, he grunted, "If my reaction was even a fraction of a second slower, your head would be rolling in the dirt right now." Gulping hard, Rabin awkwardly stammered out, "All right, you caught me." Pardek scowled, studying the kid in total disbelief. "Do you genuinely have zero concept of how monstrous an actual knight can be?" Realizing he was dealing with an absolute amateur, he broke it down. "A true noble knight, like him. He has been aggressively swinging practice swords since he was barely out of diapers. His entire existence revolves around mastering the brutal art of absolute slaughter. They blindly charge into uncharted dungeons, completely laugh in the face of death, and butcher nightmarish beasts. Then they march into massive wars, slaughtering enemy forces just to rack up sheer glory. You only get that elite title when your hands are thoroughly drenched in blood. Only then do the high-ranking royals actually give a damn and officially crown them with the title of knight." His expression hardened as he warned faking the title of a knight is a massive offense. Genuine or a fraud, it brings absolute chaos. Anyone with the sheer nerve to fake that rank is incredibly dangerous unless they possess absolute faith in their blade. No ordinary fool would ever take that risk. Out of countless warriors who wield a sword, barely a fraction ever earn that crest. A kid barely in his 20s throwing around that title. He must be an absolute monster in combat. Cold sweat trickled down Rabin's pale face. He stammered, "Wait, does that mean he could beat you, boss?" Pardek shrugged his tone flat. "Most likely." He paused, recalling those piercing, crimson eyes burning behind the mask. "Plus, he is marching straight toward the Taiwan estate. Word is they just unearthed a dungeon out there. Maybe he is heading over to crack it wide open. Since we share a route, our paths will definitely cross." Off to the side, Eugene smirked internally. "Thank God I kept my cool. Does swinging around the knight title actually hold this much power? If this bluff keeps paying off, great. But I desperately need to gear up for what is coming." His piercing gaze swept over the distant campfire. Putting the unconscious guy aside, these men are seasoned fighters. So why on earth would the Taiwan family recruit a bunch of street thugs instead of hardened pros like them? Or better yet, their own private guard. The whole setup reeks of suspicion. Without warning, he pushed himself up and strolled straight toward their camp. Rabin flinched, his voice shaking. "Boss, why is he coming over here?" Reaching up, Eugene unclasped his heavy mask. "Rumor has it you boys are also heading to the Taiwan stronghold." The pale moonlight washed over his breathtaking, almost otherworldly features as he offered, "Seeing as our destinations align, why not hit the road together?" His overwhelming aura practically sparkled in the dark, leaving the hardened men utterly stunned. Rabin scrambled over his words. Absolutely, sir." Darkness faded into a crisp morning, and the newly formed convoy marched into Martella, a quiet settlement bordering the Taiwan territory. Trailing behind, Eugene let out a silent sigh of relief, thanking his lucky stars these guys completely bought his night act. Tagging along with this crew was the perfect excuse to drain them for solid intel. Suddenly a familiar high-pitched voice chirped. Sir Eugene Miriam bobbed eagerly in the morning breeze. The tiny spirit puffed his chest out. "I did exactly what you asked. I eavesdropped on those muscleheads." Eugene kept his eyes forward. "Catch anything actually useful?" The fairy dumped the gossip. "The old Lord Taiwan is in terrible shape. The guy could literally drop dead any second. Oh, and a massive untouched dungeon just popped up right in his backyard. Raiding that place would mint an absolute fortune, but the Tywin family is completely broke. No cash, no army to claim it. Eugene absorbed the chatter, his mind racing. A fresh dungeon. Miriam buzzed around his shoulder again, breaking the silence. But wait. If the old man is about to kick the bucket, what happens to Littlefield? Does the kid just show up to become a homeless orphan? Eugene cut him off sharply. Not my problem. The spirit gasped, visibly heartbroken. But how is the poor boy supposed to survive? Miriam frantically chewed his nails. What if his greedy relatives toss him into the streets? Or worse? Eugene shot the fairy a sideways glance. He figured the dying lord only dragged the kid out here for one final tragic farewell before drawing his last breath. Not a single flicker of pity crossed his icy features. But deep down he knew that from this moment forward, both his destiny and the fragile boy's were bound to clash and shift violently. Heavy horse hooves battered the cobblestone. Bustling vendor shouts filled the vibrant air. They had finally made it. Golden morning rays spilled dramatically through the colossal iron gates. Looming ahead was the legendary Roose Hold, the fortress of House Tywin. The ragtag caravan poured into the sprawling courtyard. Eugene blinked, mildly impressed. The massive architecture was way more intimidating than the rumors suggested. Miriam darted around wildly, screeching. "Oh my God, Eugene! You absolutely need to grind your way up and buy a mega mansion. Just like this." Eugene snatched the noisy spirit out of the air. "Zip it and stay close," he hissed coldly. Just as they pushed deeper into the grounds, an arrogant voice barked from behind, demanding they state their business. Pardek slapped on a business smile. "Good day, my lord. We are the hired muscle, straight from the Phelan Trade Guild. And whom might we have the pleasure of addressing?" A strikingly handsome man, with golden hair and icy blue eyes, stepped forward, his extravagant clothes dripping with aristocratic arrogance. "I am the rightful heir, Kamara Tywin," he sneered. "Now tell me, is that mountain of cargo in the back meant for my vaults?" The subordinate bowed his head respectfully. "Yes, sir. Just as you commanded, the entire cargo has been secured without a scratch." Kamara waved his hand dismissively. "Great. Stop dragging your feet and get everything unloaded now." His gaze then drifted toward the newcomers. "And what about that dead weight over there? Why are they just standing around?" Stepping forward, "I go by the name Knight Ian Eugene, and this kid right here is—" Before he could finish, a booming voice echoed from the courtyard. "Sliced Brother Kamara. Just what the hell do you think you're doing?" Eugene flinched. A cold chill ran down his spine. He knew that voice, all too well. A man rode in at the head of a heavily armored cavalry, glaring down at them. "How many times do I have to remind you? Screening these filthy outsiders is your—" A gleaming rose-shaped crest sat proudly on the nobleman's heavy cloak. Eugene's crimson eyes narrowed into deadly slits. "Ah, right. How could I ever forget that disgusting tone?" It was the infamous commander of the dragon and demon hunting unit. The very bastard who first tracked down his secret sanctuary. The exact same monster who, alongside Durrit, had subjected him to unimaginable Sir Bertil Tywin. The arrogant knight and second-born son of the prestigious Tywin family stood right before him. Kamara scoffed, a tight, condescending smirk creeping across his face. Do I seriously need to report every tiny detail to my little brother? Careful now. If any strangers heard you, they might actually mistake you for the heir." Bertil gritted his teeth, his arrogance faltering. "That is not what I meant at all." Eugene abruptly stepped into the middle of their family drama, snapping their attention back to him. "Excuse me?" he shouted, making sure all eyes were locked dead onto him. "I have an urgent letter right here, straight from the village chief of Broadwyn." Bertil arrogantly thrust his hand out to snatch the envelope, but Eugene smoothly yanked it away, leaving the second son grasping at thin air. Instead, he bypassed him entirely, dropping the parchment right into Kamara's hands. Kamara raised an eyebrow. "Oh, a message from Broadwyn." Tearing open the seal, Kamara's eyes went wide. No way. The entire mercenary squad got wiped out by a pack of wolves. He looked down at the boy. And this scrawny kid you dragged all the way here is our father's illegitimate. Hearing his own existence called out, little Khalid shrank back, trembling like a leaf. Panic-stricken, the boy offered a clumsy bow. Hello, my lords. I am Khalid. Kamara beamed, putting on a sickeningly sweet display. Well, while the eldest brother played the welcoming host, Bertle looked like he wanted to vomit. It is about time. Father has been dying to see you. Scowling in sheer disgust, Bertle barked at the nearby guards. Get this filthy rat out of my sight. Scrub him down and force him into some respectable clothes. The armored men seized the terrified boy by the arms. Right away, sir. But before they could drag Khalid off, a tall figure blocked their path. Hold it right there. Bertle's furious glare snapped over to the brazen mercenary. Eugene stood his ground, his tone dead serious. We need to talk about my payout first. I want a face-to-face with the Lord. Bertle's face flushed purple with rage. Absolutely not. Eugene feigned innocent confusion. Come on, not even a quick chat? Bertle shot back. My father's health is rapidly deteriorating. He barely has the strength to speak. I will pay your bounty in pure gold. Now take it and get lost. Eugene's crimson eyes flared with a dangerous predatory glint. I risked my neck to drag your precious little brother back home in one piece. Bertle was having none of it, his temper exploding. I swear, peasant, do not make me repeat myself. Kamara casually leaned in, pouring gasoline on the fire. Oh, calm down. What is the harm in letting the man say hi? Bertle whipped around. The eldest brother crossed his arms, wearing a mocking grin. Besides, it is only polite to officially introduce the new kid and let his savior pay respects. Bertle screamed back that the old man was barely lucid for 60 minutes a day. There was no way in hell he would waste that precious time on a filthy, wandering stray. Kamara's smirk widened into a vicious sneer. Wow, taking over father's personal schedule now, are we? Bertle trembled with absolute fury. He closed the distance, his voice rising into a sharp shout. Brother, why do you keep twisting my words? Yet despite the boiling rage beneath the surface, his composure remained completely unbroken. Pivoting abruptly toward the masked knight, Kamara offered a smooth apology. Oh, please forgive me, Knight Eugene. I imagine things are pretty tough for you right now, considering my brother is parading around as the acting heir. A sly, mocking smirk crept across his face as he clamped a heavy hand on the man's shoulder. So, do be careful on your trip back home. Without missing a beat, Kamara happily grabbed Philip's hand. Come along, little brother. Let me show you around. We'll start with a grand tour of the estate. The young boy shrank back, stammering out a hesitant, okay. Beneath his cold mask, Eugene watched the scene unfold, his mind racing. I get it now. He never planned on letting me meet the Lord in the first place. Out of nowhere, a booming voice shattered the tension. Sir Tywin Galfordic came stomping into view, casually hauling a grown man over his broad shoulder. Found him. I've been hunting you down all morning. Bertle rushed over, eyes wide with alarm. Hey, what on earth is going on? With a heavy thud, the knight dumped his human cargo. Just some trash mercenaries. They've been shaking down the locals, skipping drills and slacking off all week. So I hauled them in. Galfordic aggressive. What do you say we execute one of them? You know, set a little example for the rest. The suggestion made him visibly squirm, casting a nervous, sideways glance over at Eugene. Sure, they were just temporary hired muscle meant to clear the dungeon, but an execution was extreme. Quickly intervening, Bertle grabbed the knight's shoulder and forcefully steered him away. We can handle this mess later. I'll discipline them myself. Too many people are listening out here. Let's take this inside. Caught off guard, Galfordic simply shrugged and went along with it. Fine, whatever. Just then, wait, was that the famous Sir Galfordic? Intrigued, the masked knight fired a question back. You actually know who that is? Absolutely, he snatched third place at the recent Everglow family tournament. He's an incredibly hyped up and coming knight. The guy has the terrifying raw strength of a literal monster, paired with flawless technique. Rumor has it, he completely crushed over 1,000 challengers in the arena that day. This new information left Eugene genuinely baffled. Why would a powerhouse like that waste his time out here in the middle of nowhere? Pardek rubbed his chin in deep thought. It's probably because of that brand new dungeon that's about to be breached. Even out in the boondocks, whoever successfully cracks a virgin dungeon first is guaranteed a massive boost in fame and glory. Cracking those gates is practically a death sentence. Countless warriors have already lost their lives. Maybe Sir Galfriedic is planning to use this suicide mission as a stepping stone to score a sweet gig with a major noble family. Eugene chewed on that thought for a second. Looking for a promotion, huh? Snapping out of his thoughts, Eugene suddenly called out, startling the other man. Hey, Pardek, your current contract expires today, doesn't it? Pardak blinked, hesitating, as if he wanted to pry deeper. Yeah, it does. But before he could question it, Eugene spun around, flashing a knowing smile. In that case, how about I hire you? Later that night, a brilliant silver full moon bathed the entire estate in an eerie glow. Down in the courtyard, Bertram and Galfriedic were busy drilling the troops to the bone. I have to be the one to conquer that dungeon. High above the training grounds, Kamara sat by his window, glaring down at the spectacle below. Ever since our father's health tanked, my arrogant brother has been blatantly gunning for the throne. He even dragged that monster Galfriedic into the mix. He's dead set on claiming the glory of cracking that dungeon all by himself. And if he actually pulls it off, the people will practically hand him the crown on a silver platter. His desperate spiral was suddenly cut short by a sharp knock at his door. Damn it, what's my next move? It's way too late to hire any of those cheap street thugs, and I'm completely out of allies. What the hell am I supposed to do? A muffled voice echoed from the hallway. My Lord Master Knight Eugene is requesting a private audience. Kamara paused, the gears rapidly turning in his head before he barked out a command. Eugene, wait. The masked knight who delivered Philip. Bring him in immediately. And threw the heavy wooden doors wide open. Right this way, Sir Eugene. Pushing himself up with a smooth smile, he closed the distance to Eugene. You can stop sweating over Phil. I've personally secured his little hideaway. Once my father finally regains consciousness, he'll compensate you handsomely for hauling my darling brother back in one piece. Honestly, slipping that letter to me instead of handing it to him, that was a beautiful move. Took a massive weight right off my shoulders. Eugene's sudden voice shattered the quiet, making the noble cock his head in sheer confusion. Well, that's music to my ears. A chilling smirk stretched across Eugene's face, his irises flashing a dangerous crimson. My business was strictly with the lord of this territory. Having some random third party crash the event? Yeah, that left a bitter taste in my mouth. Kamara arched a curious brow at the sheer audacity. Oh, is that so? Dropping heavily into the chair across from him. Cut to the chase. What's your endgame here? Demanding a face-to-face with my father just to double-check my credentials? Only half the puzzle, Eugene shot back smoothly. Actually, Kamara, I'm here to make you an irresistible offer. Slot me into your raid squad for this upcoming dungeon run. Kamara's eyebrows shot to his hairline before he erupted into a booming roar of laughter. The sheer volume of his howling laughter violently shook the cavernous great hall. Resting a heavy chin in his palm, he shot Eugene an intensely amused glare. I'll admit you're a hell of a lot more entertaining than I pegged you for. A so-called knight, Kamara openly scrutinized the stranger's battered, dirt-stained gear. A thick, mocking sneer twisted his lips. Did you just pull that fancy title out of thin air? Rumor has it you slaughtered a handful of scrub bandits, and now you want to crash my raid, just to inflate your own pathetic glory. Give me one single solitary reason why I shouldn't throw this pitch right back in your face. Unfazed Eugene lazily crossed his legs, locking eyes with the Lord. Because as things stand, this deal is practically a steal for you. Kamara narrowed his eyes dangerously. Spit it out. What exactly are you getting at? Instead of answering, Eugene started aggressively listing the perks. Here's the catch. When we bust that gate wide open, my fee is exactly 100 silver coins plus half the junk drops. Everything else? Keep all those priceless mana stones for you and your mercenaries. Cocking his head to the side, Kamara muttered. That pitch isn't just good. It's so insanely cheap it screams trap. You realize you're pricing yourself drastically below the market rate. Eugene didn't even flinch. So do we have a deal, or are you backing out? Kamara flashed a cocky smirk, waving his hand dismissively. Let's be real here. You're the desperate one begging for a slot, not me. Still, the noble studied the stranger with laser focus. It was common knowledge that true knights lived and bled for their sacred honor. Taking another look at those ragged clothes, he clearly looked like a lone wolf without a powerful family backing him, completely blind to the allure of wealth. This guy definitely worshipped prestige and glory over cold hard cash. Plus, going off the intel from earlier, Eugene brutally sliced right through his internal monologue. You've got it twisted. The guy's sweating bullets in absolute desperation. That's you. Not the brazen call-out made Kamara's eyes snap wide open in pure, unadulterated shock. His mind violently crashed onto two specific names, Bertel and Galfridic. A sinister, razor-sharp grin ripped across Kamara's face. This drifter knew exactly how to play his winning hand. He was leagues above those pushing fiercely off the armrests, he stood tall. Fine. I'd be an absolute fool to kick a golden goose like this away. The spot is officially yours, Sir Eugene. Don't disappoint me. Drawing out his words with heavy purpose, the young noble slowly extended his hand right into the knight's personal space. It was a genius play. Mana crystals were a nightmare to refine and drained cash to process, whereas junk drops could be flipped for instant cold hard cash. Staring right at Kamara, Eugene was suddenly thrown back to Pardek's clever advice. I can hook you up with a top-tier merchant guild, Sir Eugene, assuming you make it crystal clear you're only targeting the scrap drops. Pitch that, and Lord Kamara will instantly swallow the bait. Meanwhile, Galfridic casually spun a deadly blade in his grip, letting out a mocking scoff. Well, isn't this... Glaring out the dusty window, Bertel muttered back. He's throwing another stray into the kill squad. Whatever. It's way too late for them to put up a real fight now. Spinning the dagger effortlessly around his knuckles, he shot back, These cursed labyrinths aren't some damned kiddie park. Make one stupid mistake, and you become permanent dungeon food. Out there you either survive or you bleed out. If some pathetic weakling starts dragging our pace through the mud, I'll personally end them. Bertel just threw up his hands and let out an exhausted sigh. Hold up what? About that supposed knight my naive brother dug up. Leaning a heavy hand against the back of Galfridic's chair, he sneered. I wouldn't hold my breath. My little brother barely rubs shoulders with the local aristocrat, and his networking skills are basically non-existent. If you don't mind, I'd prefer you look him in the eye and tell him that yourself. Pivoting toward Bertel, he questioned, Why dump this kind of baggage onto me? A booming voice suddenly echoed through the hall, snapping both their heads around. My bad for the wait, folks. I was just having a quick chat with my brand new knight. Without further ado, let me introduce the latest addition to our strike squad. Eugene strode confidently into the chamber, his rugged crew trailing behind. Sir Yan Eugene and his veteran band of mercenaries. Bertel squinted, an uneasy realization hitting him hard. It was that exact same guy from before. And he actually dragged an entire mercenary outfit in here with him. Speaking up, he argued, Look, my brother definitely crossed a line, but we absolutely cannot let some random guy with zero proven track record just join our ranks. Kamara crossed his arms. His background might be a mystery, but his combat skills, I'll bet my life on them. Flashing a brilliant grin, he gestured proudly toward the newcomer. You see, my little brother gave me the rundown just a bit ago. Those pesky bandits have been terrorizing our borders and making our lives a living hell, right? Well, rumor has it that Sir Eugene here completely incinerated their camp with a blazing blade on his way over. A sharp glint caught the light as Galfridic spun a dagger in his grip. With raw firepower like that, With a violent flick of his wrist, he hurled the dagger straight at Eugene's skull. Eugene's pupils shrank as his survival instincts flared. In a blur of motion, he ripped the blade from his hip. Blinding flames erupted as his sword clashed against the steel, violently parrying the projectile. The deflected dagger slammed into the stone wall, spiderwebbing the solid masonry with a deafening crack. Thick dark smoke billowed from the quivering blade, hissing from the intense heat. Lounging in his seat, Galfridic rested his chin on his knuckles, a twisted, thrilled grin spreading across his face. Suddenly, he slammed his hands down and vaulted to his feet. Oh ho! Stalking toward Eugene like a predator, he chuckled. My deepest apologies for such a nasty greeting. His eyes scanned Eugene's unblemished skin. No rough calluses, no sun. A suffocating aura of bloodlust poured out of him. Hey there, little buddy. Care to show me what you're really made of? By nightfall, massive crowds flooded the grand arena. Flickering torches cast dramatic dancing shadows across the packed courtyard. Frantic whispers rippled through the spectators. Lord Galfredrick is demanding a live duel right this second. Throngs of eager fans crushed against the barricades, desperate for a glimpse. We have to witness the sheer power of the guy who took third place in the grand tournament. The maniac who literally ripped monstrous beasts to shreds with nothing but his bare hands. Good lord, is that freak even human? The roaring audience completely jammed both sides of the arena. The crowd's eyes were glued to the arena gates, completely in the dark about who would step out to face him. Tuning out the endless murmurs, Eugene coolly strapped on his armor. Honestly, I almost pity whoever's walking out there. But Galfredrick wasn't sweating it. If anything, the guy was practically buzzing with adrenaline. He dragged his blade against the stone, kicking up a wicked trail of fiery sparks. Hoisting his weapon high, his entire demeanor snapped into deadly focus. That cocky grin melted away, replaced by an ice-cold intensity. Eugene just watched him, tilting his head with absolute unnerving indifference, before slowly dropping his gaze to the dirt beneath his boots. With a vicious flick of his wrist, his own blade kissed the earth, erupting in a shower of embers. Caught right in the crossfire, the stone, he cleared his throat and bellowed the starting call. The second the echo faded, a heavy bell rang out from the stands, unleashing the chaos. Boom! A heavy boot shattered the arena floor into jagged rubble. As they lunged, steel screamed against steel. A blinding flash of sparks illuminated the Colosseum. The two warriors locked their weapons tight against the hilts before viciously shoving each other back. Skidding apart, Galfredrick and Eugene left a glowing trail of scorched earth in their wake. Galfredrick chuckled, throwing up a hand to beckon his opponent in a cocky taunt. Eugene's eyes widened, locking on to the sheer disrespect flashing across his rival's face. Closing the gap in a heartbeat, Eugene unleashed a blistering barrage of strikes, desperately trying to pin him down. Up in the stands, Rabin lost his mind. Oh man, that's Sir Eugene for you. He's absolutely tearing Galfredrick apart. But Pardek just crossed his arms, coldly analyzing the clash. Don't be fooled. He's just testing the waters. His gaze remained glued to the dirt. Sure, Galfredrick looked like he was losing ground, yet he brushed off every single one of Eugene's heavy swings without breaking a sweat. Actually, the guy was grinning ear to ear. As he deflected this footwork, it's incredibly rough. No rhythm, no textbook patterns. It was impossible to pin down what martial art he was even using. This wasn't some refined academy discipline. It was raw, savage instinct, like a beast raised in the untamed wilds. He signaled for Eugene to drop his guard. Taking a deep breath, Eugene actually looked pleased, playing right into his expectations. Deflecting another wild slash, Galfredrick smirked. You know, buddy, that knight title of yours is completely fake, ain't it? The veteran, your blade work has zero fundamentals. Your posture is an absolute mess. You've never stepped foot in a training hall, have you? You're just coasting on brute strength. Eugene stiffened. Sure, a blade doesn't define a warrior, but it only takes a few crossed swords for an expert to read you like a book. Riding his own momentum, Galfredrick vaulted into the air, raining down a devastating counteroffensive. Eugene barely brought his guard up in time. You've got a seriously big mouth. Galfredrick just shot him a sly grin, tossing out a wager. Take me down, and maybe I'll keep your little secret. Then he swung again. The impact was monstrous, forcing Eugene to frantically parry the steel away. But that was exactly what Galfredrick wanted. He twisted his hilt upward and violently pinned Eugene's weapon to the dirt, completely shattering his Not wasting a single millisecond, Galfredrick surged. He pivoted with terrifying speed, catching the fake knight, totally blind. He brought his heavy blade crashing down right toward his skull. By pure instinct, Eugene threw his guard up just in the nick of time. Even so, the sheer kinetic energy of the impact was utterly crushing. Eugene was sent flying, smashing violently into the stone arena walls. Bertle snickered from the sidelines, while the rest of the crowd gasped in shock. It looked like he was out cold. His knuckles turned white as his grip on the hilt tightened. Eugene's eyes locked onto his opponent with a lethal, and he forcefully hoisted himself out of the wreckage, sending chunks of shattered stone and dust cascading to the floor. A lightning-fast slash whistled right past Galfredic's ribs, plunging them into a nail-biting standoff. That speed is mind-blowing, he admitted to himself. Eugene violently shoved Galfredic's blade downward, but the seasoned warrior just flashed a cocky smirk. Pivoting on his heel, he launched himself into a brutal, spinning death blow. Galfredic didn't even flinch, flawlessly parrying with a vicious upward cut. The deafening crack of steel echoed as both heavy blades practically exploded, raining shrapnel across the arena. Yet neither man backed down, ruthlessly trading strikes with their jagged, splintered hilts. Ditching the useless metal, the brawl instantly devolved into a savage fistfight. Tossing the scraps away, they aggressively locked fingers in a massive clash of pure, raw muscle. As their veins popped, Galfredic stared at the iron grip binding his wrists. Ha! Just a kid, but he's got insane power and the absolute sheer will to crush me. Fine, I'll admit your physical specs are totally off the charts. The veteran's biceps suddenly bulged, and with a vicious yank, he forcefully dragged Eugene right off his center of gravity. But my battle experience absolutely crushes yours. Panic flashed across Eugene's face as he realized the trap. He plunged forward uncontrollably, drawing loud, collective gasps from the stunned audience. Flashing a triumphant grin, Galfredic chambered his fist for a devastating knockout punch. Time practically crawled to a dead halt around Eugene. In a split second, he slapped his palm flat against the dirt. Galfredic surged upward, snatching the boy's free wrist. He was entirely committed to sinking that brutal haymaker. But Eugene swiftly jerked his trapped arm backward, spectacularly flipping the veteran's momentum. Staring down the incoming fist, Galfredic made a rapid calculation. This kid's moves are completely wild. Either he's a frighteningly fast learner, flawlessly adapting on the fly, or his raw survival instincts are just absolutely terrifying. As the knuckles zoomed toward his face, a genuine smile spread across Galfredic's lips. Where the hell did this monster kid come from? Eugene unleashed a perfectly aimed, bone-crushing right hook squarely into his jaw. The massive impact sent Galfredic soaring backward through the air, forcing panicked bystanders to dive out of his crash path. He slammed violently into the arena boundary, blasting solid bricks into a cloud of dust. Slumping flat on his back, eyes rolled entirely back into his skull, and his jaw swelling rapidly, the veteran's mind went blank. The arena fell dead silent before the referee bellowed. The winner is Eugene. Eugene finally let out a heavy breath. Knight Eugene. The mesmerized crowd swarmed the floor. Are you kidding me? This new guy is an absolute beast. Jan Eugene. What a weird name. Hawk Rabin puffed out his chest, screaming, "Ha ha, did you losers see that? That is my guy right there." Partek beside him just gave a huge side-eye. You are getting way too cocky. Meanwhile, across the wrecked floor, Galfredic was completely knocked out cold. But then a faint spark of life flickered in his pupils. The seasoned veteran slowly blinked awake. Hauling his massive frame upright, he began marching straight at Eugene. His hulking, monstrous shadow swallowed the kid whole as he lunged forward, but suddenly, before the boy could even flinch, the giant snatched his wrist. "Give it up for him!" Galfredic cheerfully hoisted the boy's arm high into the air, hyping the roaring crowd to scream the winner's name. While Eugene stood there totally stunned, the entire Colosseum erupted into a deafening chant. Jan Eugene. Up in the stands, Kamara watched the celebration, violently grinding his teeth in pure toxic rage. A short while later, a massive, mouth-watering banquet materialized. Maids and butlers lined the dining hall, flashing eager customer service smiles. Galfredic scowled awkwardly at the insane spread. The head steward leaned in, explaining, "These are direct orders from Lord Kamara. To successfully breach the prison gates, you require prime nourishment and rest. I will personally oversee Sir Eugene's dining experience." Other attendants buzzed around like bees. "Is the lighting comfortable, sir? We pulled the drapes knowing you despise bright glares." Another hoisted a crystal decanter. Name your preferred vintage, and I shall curate the perfect pairing. Perched casually on Eugene's head, Miriam watched the absolute circus unfold. She let out a teasing snicker. Being a vampire, human food was basically garbage to her, but she kept that little detail to herself. "Sir, won't your stomach explode if you scarf all this down?" Eugene muttered under his breath. "I appreciate the thought, but no thanks." Raising his voice, he declared, "Moving forward, I will handle my own rations. Clear the room." The head butler opened his mouth to protest, but Eugene instantly shut him down. Shooting Lord Kamara a lethal glare, he hissed, "Got it, I've survived deep in the mountains alone for over 10 years. Ever since that chaotic night, the entire castle's attitude toward him had pulled a complete 180. As Eugene strolled through the halls, Kamara sidled up, desperate to spark a chat. "Ah, if it isn't our legendary knight, Eugene. Did you catch some decent sleep?" Eugene barely glanced his way. "It was tolerable." Kamara pouted. "But why reject the luxury suite I so carefully prepped for you?" Nearby, Pardek flashed an amused smirk, as Raven practically bowed to the floor. Lord Eugene, did you just cough? Are you unwell?" Eugene hid a sly grin. "I could definitely get used to this royal Suddenly, Galfridic barreled through the corridor, shoved Raven out of the way and slapped a heavy hand onto Eugene's shoulder. "Hey, aren't we brothers in arms, Eugene?" he boomed. Eugene brushed him off with deadpan coldness. "Galfridic, back out of my personal space." The massive warrior asked if he had rested up. "My jaw is still throbbing from last night's beatdown," Eugene thought, deeply annoyed. Poking at the nasty bruise on Eugene's cheek, Galfridic teased, "Look at this pale face." Eugene's eyes narrowed. "Are you begging for round 2? Undeterred, the brute asked if Eugene had any free time. "The weather's perfect. Care to spar?" Raven practically jumped with excitement. "Oh, I am absolutely watching this." Eugene just sighed. Galfridic clearly couldn't care less about my official knight status. Eugene mused privately. "Even the hardest skeptics here are finally warming up to me. I got what I wanted, sure, but being swarmed by all these fanboys still makes my skin crawl." "You seriously want another thrashing?" Eugene challenged. Galfridic threw his head back and laughed. "Only one way to find out." Suddenly, dragging footsteps echoed down the hall. Philip stumbled into view, totally battered and soaked in blood. He rasped out Eugene's name, causing the entire horrified crowd to freeze and stare. Panting heavily, Philip locked eyes with him and gasped, "How?" Flashback to a dead-silent moonlit night. A blood-curdling shriek violently ripped through the darkness. "Arg! Forgive me, my lord. Please show mercy." A menacing shadow stretched across the stone wall. Smack thud. Spurtle glared down at the whimpering mess on the floor. "You absolute idiot. If you had just handled this job cleanly, we wouldn't be in this mess." His voice dropped to a lethal chill. "If you had just wiped out that village rat from the very beginning, we wouldn't have some freakish red-eyed knight crashing the Rose Castle." Bertle's eyes practically glowed with sheer rage as he roared, "You completely trashed my entire plan." Philip, bleeding on his knees, begged desperately. "I am so sorry, master. Those mercenaries were supposed to be elite." Bertle scoffed, clicking his tongue in absolute disgust. Elite, they were a pack of useless amateurs, ripped to shreds by mere black wolves. How dare they take my coin, if they can't even handle stray mutts? Grabbing Philip violently by the jaw, he snarled, "Are those eyes of yours completely useless?" Pressing a jagged blade directly against Philip's throat, Bertle unleashed his full, unhinged fury. "Give me one good reason," he threatened, terrorizing the broken man, "why I shouldn't slice you wide open right now." Bystanders turned ghost white as blood-curdling screams pierced the air. Dusting off his hands, Bertle chewed on a lingering thought. "Damn, what's the play here?" he muttered. Snuffing the guy out in broad daylight right inside the city walls was off the table. Suddenly a wicked smirk crept across his face. "Oh, that's perfect." His gaze drifted up toward the dusty light filtering through a high window looming right over Philip's battered form. It was the only foolproof plan. The absolute perfect cover to make the kid disappear without a single trace. He took one last look at the skylight before the memory shattered, snapping him right back to reality. Crossing his arms, a voice probed. Word on the street is Lord Bertle ordered you to drag him down to the dungeon. Eugene casually leaned back against the cold stone. My gut is screaming that this is a trap. How about yours? Slumping into a wooden chair, Philip scoffed bitterly. I'm already marked for death. So I guess they're just going to bury both of us down in that pit, huh? But he instantly shut his mouth when Eugene dropped a bombshell. You remember those hired blades who got shredded by a pack of black wolves? Right on the village dirt road. Those so-called rogue mercenaries didn't just wander in. One of your own elders pulled their strings. Eugene shot the kid, a heavy, knowing glare. They never planned on you making it to this castle breathing. And then he dropped an absolute game-changer that left Philip stunned. There's still a back door out of this mess. A way you survive. Eugene leaned in close. Philip, how would you like to become my slave? The boy whipped around, his jaw practically hitting the floor. You just turned 16. You survived your coming-of-age ritual. Legally, you don't need a single ounce. You hold the reins to your own destiny now. Eugene didn't let up. So what's it gonna be? Keep running and wait for some assassin to slice your throat? Or claw your way forward until your absolute dying breath? Fast forward to the day the sprawling forest gates finally unsealed. A massive crowd swarmed the imposing entrance. Tension choked the air. Nobody had a clue what nightmare-fuel monster pacing before the vanguard. Alfred laid out a grim tack. Bottom feeders will be your standard goblins. Mid-tiers are the giant spider hounds. As for the high-level threats, expect pure chaos. Our primary objective is carving a bloody path straight to the next zone. If an alpha predator drops in, you fall back instantly. Got it? Sir, yes, sir, the squad roared back. First up, fan out and sweep the perimeter for hidden dungeon lairs, Alfred barked. Nearby, a sweaty... Thank God it's just trash mob goblins. Think it'll get messy? Beside him, a slacker crossed his arms with a sly grin. Doesn't matter to me. Soon as we wipe the low-level grunts, I'm sneaking right back to camp. His buddy blinked in surprise. Wait, seriously? Look, man, it's our first time hitting a raw dungeon, the schemer whispered. It's a complete bloodbath out there. Nobody gives a damn about what happened. For all we know, we'll just end up as monster bait while scrambling over a handful of cheap loot. The moment things go sideways, we ditch. But as the words left his mouth, he slammed right into a towering figure. The grunt opened his mouth to spit an insult, but the words died in his throat. Bertle glared daggers at him, demanding to know if Philip was around. Panic flashed in the soldier's eyes. He instantly plastered on a fake smile and bowed deeply. Lord Bertle, Philip, whoever, do you mean, sir? I'm asking where that little rat Philip is, Bertle snarled. I specifically dumped his ass right in this squad. Trembling, the other soldier pointed a shaky finger. Oh, do you mean that? A few yards away, Philip was completely oblivious, happily chatting away with Eugene. Master Eugene, I brought you some rations. Please come back in one piece. Eugene simply offered a cool nod. Bertle shoved the trembling grunt out of his way and began stomping furiously toward the duo. These bottom-feeding branch family trashes scurrying around like a bunch of gutless rats, he seethed internally. Closing the distance, Bertle barked out, What the hell are you dragging your feet for, Philip? The kid jumped out of his skin. Bertle glared down at him with freezing contempt. Did you forget my direct orders? Strap on your gear and march your ass back to the front line, now! Trembling like a leaf, Philip instinctively scrambled behind Eugene, using the taller man as a human shield, which only made Bertle's blood boil hotter. Eugene just watched with a cold side-eye as Bertle violently lunged forward, trying to yank Philip away by the arm. I said get back to your damn post! But before Bertle's fingers could even brush the boy, Eugene's grip clamped down on his wrist like a steel vice, forcing back the hell off. A thick vein throbbed on Bertle's temple at those words. You've got to be kidding me, the man sneered. Throwing a guy who only knows how to chop veggies straight into the dungeon? Have you completely lost your mind? He flicked his wrist, looking absolutely disgusted. Watch your mouth. I'm just trying to toughen the brat up. Bertle closed the distance, his voice dripping with venom. Know your place. You don't have the right. The man stiffened at that, shooting back. I think you're the one forgetting who's in charge here. Before anyone could drag Field off, Eugene cut in sharply. As of yesterday, this kid is bound to me as my servant. Everyone in this room saw it happen, he declared, leaving Bertle completely caught off guard. Galfridic locked eyes with him, his tone dead serious. It's a blood bond. You touch even a single hair on his head, you're picking a fight with me. Eugene stepped right up into Bertle's personal space, his blade sliding halfway out of its scabbard, with a menacing, "Will care to warm up a little before we hit the dungeon?" he taunted. Bertle snapped, his face flushed with rage. Who gave you the right to pull a His voice echoed across the room. You think snatching up some mutt from a rival family is just a walk in the park? You're completely ruining his chances at moving up. Nearby, the murmurs of the troops caught his ear. Don't sweat it. These guys aren't the phony knights we dealt with last time. These commanders are the real deal. Absolute beasts on. Did you catch Lord Eugene and Lord Galfridic sparring last week? Total masterclass. Bertle scowled quietly, agonizing over how long it would take to achieve that kind of raw power. Yeah, he'd probably need a whole second lifetime just to come close. Right as he was stewing in his own bitter thoughts, Kamara popped up out of nowhere, giving him a firm slap on the shoulder. If Lord Eugene is watching over him, I know my little brother is in good hands. He flashed a knowing smirk, glancing over. Besides, the kid is 16 now. He's a grown man. It's time he paved his own way. Bertle was fuming too much to even spit out a response. Watching them, Eugene narrowed his eyes. Field was nothing more than, once a weakling ends up in the crosshairs of a predator, their chances of making it out alive drop to 0. You can hold your breath all you want, but the hunters will never stop tracking your scent. His jaw clenched, a heavy scowl darkening his face. If you can't toughen up on your own, you'd better find a pack to hide behind. Kamara beamed, striding over to give Field an encouraging pat on the back. Come on, let me give you a tour of the study. Oh, by the way, do you know how to read? Trust me, knowledge is the ultimate survival tool. A scout rushed up to deliver the report. No traces of Domer anywhere, sir. Looks like the monsters haven't breached the lair's perimeter. We're greenlit to unseal the gate. Galfridic grinned, playfully shoving Eugene's shoulder. Perfect. Let's get this show on the road. Heavy stone ground against stone, as the massive doors swung wide, exposing the yawning, pitch-black maw of the dungeon. Galfridic tossed a sharp look over his shoulder. Keep yourselves alive in there. Nobody's going to hold your hand. Standing at his back was a hardened squad of soldiers, geared to the teeth in heavy steel and polished weapons. Taking point, Galfridic signaled the strike team, plunging straight into the looming darkness. Staying behind Field and Kamara waved them off, shouting that they'd be back in 4 days. Lord Eugene, keep your eyes peeled. The colossal iron gates groaned shut, sealing them inside. May the heavens watch over their souls. Deep into the night, the suffocating darkness of the cavern was shattered by blood-curdling shrieks. A vanguard crumpled to the dirt crimson, painting the rocky wall. Vicious beasts swarmed from the shadows, tearing the front line to absolute shreds. The sheer volume and raw power of the horde were completely overwhelming. Men dropped like flies, their desperate cries ringing through the gloom. Somebody help me, please! Out of the absolute chaos, a blinding streak of silver flashed. A massive broadsword ripped a monster cleanly in half, snatching the terrified soldier from the jaws of death. The survivor scrambled back, hyperventilating. Wait. You absolute moron. Keep your head down or you're dead meat, Galfridic roared. His face was drenched in the beast's foul blood as he screamed for the vanguard to hold the line. He aggressively waved his arm, barking orders over the carnage. Fall back to your posts! Move! 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 The panicked troops scrambled frantic. Gotcha! Galfridic barked. Positioned dead center in the cavern, the marksmen took their stance, drawing their bowstrings taut. A relentless hail of arrows rained down in deadly precision, pinning the savage creatures to the stone floor. Still the horde surged forward like a tidal wave. Hold the line! Do not let them break through. With Galfridic spearheading the counterattack, The tide of battle slowly shifted in their favor. Soon the entire cavern was carpeted with the mangled bodies of dead goblins. A trembling rookie glanced down his stomach, doing flips. I freaking knew it. The mangled goblin corpses scattered below made him gag. Deep down, he realized from the very beginning that volunteering for this dungeon raid was pure, unadulterated suicide. Pure panic hijacked his brain. I gotta get out of here. He bolted wildly, checking over his shoulder with every frantic step. Just gotta make it to the exit. But his blind terror kept him from seeing the snarling pack of goblins entirely blocking his escape route. He kept sprinting blindly forward, desperate to break through to the surface. His foot caught on a jagged rock, sending him sprawling, just as a massive blade whistled through the air, completely obliterating the ambushers in a shout. Galfredrick stomped up from behind, his voice echoing like thunder. You absolute moron! Did you really think you could just waltz back the way we came without bumping into more of these freaks? The rookie was paralyzed with dread. Galfredrick snatched him up by the collar, hoisting him off his feet, and roared directly into his face. Get a grip, damn it! Hunkering down right here is your only shot at staying alive. He shoved the trembling kid away, barking at the rest of the squad to draw their steel, and braced himself for the onslaught. The rookie scrambled to obey, pulling his weapon with shaking hands. Just ahead, the frontline troops were locked in a brutal, messy brawl with the goblin horde. Watching the chaotic slaughter unfold on both flanks, Galfredrick violently wiped the sweat from his forehead. Did we just scrape these mercenaries off the bottom of a barrel? He muttered to himself, dragging this dead weight into a dungeon. We might as well have written our own obituaries. But before he could even catch his breath, a scout screamed over the clash of metal. They're pushing forward again! A second later, another voice, cracked with sheer terror. Commander, they're flanking us. The rear is surrounded. Son of a bitch, Galfredrick cursed, instantly snapping into commander mode. Shift into a double-sided phalanx, right freaking now. Out of nowhere, Eugene calmly stepped toward the back line. I'll take care of this. Galfredrick immediately lunged to grab his shoulder. Wait, Lord Eugene, are you crazy? It's suicide to go at them alone. But the young lord completely ignored him, blasting forward like a cannon. In less than a heartbeat, Eugene literally vanished from sight. Galfredrick's jaw dropped, staring blankly at the spot where the boy had just been standing. Eugene became a blur of motion, morphing into a series of lightning-fast, devastating cyclones as he carved his way straight into the enemy mob. His combat mask clattered uselessly against the stone floor. Jolted back to reality, Galfredrick bolted after him. Pardek, on me, lock down the rear. His strike team plowed deeper into the cavern's shadows. Damn it! Galfredrick gritted his teeth. How the hell did he cover that much ground so fast? Suddenly the veteran commander froze his eyes, blowing wide open. Up ahead stood Eugene, casually holding a mysterious flower that bathed the gloomy cave in an eerie... I cleared out the trash at the intersection, Eugene said without breaking a sweat. Does this little weed I found over in the corner actually fetch a price? Galfredrick stood there, heaving for air, completely dumbfounded. He thought to himself, are you kidding me? It's just basic phosphorescent weed, and he literally doesn't even recognize it? The commander was absolutely shaken by the sheer, terrifying scale of the boy's power. How does a kid move like a goddamn monster? But Eugene couldn't have cared less about the awe he was inspiring. He was too busy inspecting his glowing pride. Oh, never mind. The stupid thing already shriveled up, Eugene. The aftermath of the skirmish was an absolute bloodbath. Medics scrambled frantically to drag the wounded out of the danger zone. Oh my God, I'm gonna die, a man shrieked, clutching his stomach. Somebody help me, Amidst the groans of the dying, a scout jogged up. My lord, we've scraped together the last of the mana stones. Eugene didn't even look up. Drop them here. The scout carefully unfolded a blood-stained rag, revealing a pathetic handful of faintly glowing crystals. After slaughtering an entire horde, this pitiful pile was all they had to show for it. Clicking his tongue in pure disappointment, Eugene waved them off. Take 5 and catch your... He scooped up one of the gems, narrowing his eyes as he studied it. Unlike the muddy cores pulled from wild beasts, This specific stone pulsed with an icy blue radiance. Right on cue, Miriam materialized over his shoulder. What a shame. Stacked up against the high-tier stuff, this little pebble is complete. It was basic dungeon logic. The purity of the crystal directly mirrored the sheer brute force of the beast. So are the wild ones naturally bigger? Eugene asked. The water spirit shook her head. When dungeon freaks lose their minds, they mutate into roamers. But just because they go feral doesn't magically guarantee they'll drop a massive core. Think back to that repulsive fish freak you absorbed earlier. Big, nasty, and packed a hell of a punch. Mutations like that are like winning the lottery. That particular brute was strong enough to completely hijack my entire territory. Eugene's brow furrowed heavily as the memory of that brutal clash flooded back. He was just starting to realize that sucking the juice out of that monster's blood-red crystal had been nothing short of a miracle. The water spirit frantically gripped its head. All that grueling dungeon labor just to butter up those arrogant nobles? Completely wasted. A sudden chilling thought crossed its mind. Wait, are there any top-tier beasts lurking down here? Boom! A deafening crash shattered the silence, freezing everyone dead in their tracks. Galfridic whipped around, growling, "Damn it all, so much for catching our breath. Break time is over. Tighten up that formation now." "Your ranks are a total mess," he barked, his face twisting in rage. "You weak, pathetic cowards. Lord Eugene and I will take the vanguard. The rest of you trail right behind us. And listen up, anyone who breaks rank and runs will answer to me later." Eugene listened to the raging knight, masking his inner panic. Hold on. This is my absolute first time stepping foot inside. And you seriously want me leading the charge, Galfridic? Completely clueless, just kept rambling on. He casually whispered that the hired mercenaries were practically dead weight, hinting that Eugene needed to shake up their frontline tactics. Without missing a beat, Galfridic slung a heavy armored arm over Eugene's shoulder like an old drinking buddy. "Listen," he smirked. "The freaks waiting for us up ahead are going to be way deadlier than that trash we just sliced through." A manic thrill lit up his eyes. Those pathetic goblins were nothing but cheap security for the real alpha predators running this death trap. That guaranteed they were about to clash with mid-tier nightmares at the bare minimum. And once we slaughter them, you better believe the boss-level horrors are hiding deep in the heart of this abyss. His ruthless pep talk instantly drained all the color from the soldiers' faces. Eugene, however, soaked up every single brutal detail Galfridic dropped. His mind flashed back to the day he devoured the Roamer Swamp Lord's crimson mana core. That single, glowing gem had unlocked an insanely overpowered ability within his veins. Eugene tightened his grip, adrenaline pumping. If he crushed and absorbed another boss core, would he mutate an entirely new deadly skill? The eerie silence shattered. Thud. 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 Over 50 syncopated footsteps echoed just 100 meters away, backed by 3 massive, earth-shaking silhouettes. A wicked grin slashed across Galfridic's face, utterly intrigued by Eugene's sharp senses. "Oh, you hear that too?" Cracking his knuckles, Galfridic eagerly volunteered to tear into this incoming horde himself. But Eugene didn't utter a word. His eyes locked onto the shadows, glowing with Channeling explosive energy into his core, Eugene unleashed a shockwave so catastrophic it pulverized the very stone beneath his boots. His devastating strike homed in on a hulking, giant goblin, violently kicking off the bloodbath. Not wasting a second, Galfridic and his squad surged forward to press the merciless attack. The entire platoon roared as they charged into the fray. "Pardek, keep my flanks covered," Galfridic bellowed. "Yes, sir! Pushing ahead!" the soldier screamed. Meanwhile, Eugene was dancing with death, taking on 2 colossal goblins, completely solo. With a sickening crunch, he brutally hacked off one of them. Seeing the carnage, his troops hollered from the rear, "My lord, we're coming to back you up!" But Eugene was a relentless machine. He vaulted straight into the air, launching himself right up to the beast's hideous face. Wham! He struck its bulging eyeball, with bone-shattering force, unleashing a geyser of crimson that sprayed everything in sight. The behemoth shrieked in absolute agony, clawing wildly at its ruined socket, as dark blood pumped like a fountain. Smelling blood in the water, Eugene sprang again, cleanly severing several of the creature's thick, grasping fingers in midair. Using gravity as his ally, he plunged downward with skull-crushing momentum. A morbid waterfall of blood violently erupted from the monster's mangled flesh. Eugene licked his lips, savoring the adrenaline. Soaked head to toe in gore, he looked like a walking nightmare. Down below, the awestruck soldiers were utterly paralyzed by the raw savagery unfolding above them. They had always worshipped the noble image of an honorable knight. But this memory would be permanently seared into their minds. Winding up for the finale. Eugene swung hard with earth-shattering torque. Crack his steel-hard knuckles buried themselves deep into the goblin's thick skull, caving it in like a rotten melon. With one vicious yank, Eugene ripped the monster's head right off its neck. So much for elegant swordplay, righteous spirit, and a composed demeanor. The severed head dangled from his grasp, as fresh blood completely dyed the battlefield crimson. Standing amidst the slaughter, Eugene radiated the dark, suffocating aura of an This horrifying massacre totally shattered their fairy tale illusions of a valiant hero, exposing a savage brutality that was the exact opposite of a traditional knight. Eugene smirked, thoroughly admiring his own bloody masterpiece. He looked less like a knight and more like a ravenous monster, standing over the slaughtered carcasses of 3 giant goblins. All around him, the ordinary soldiers collapsed, gasping for air after the grueling bloodbath. Galfridic stayed on his feet, his hardened eyes scanning the dark. A veteran soldier gritted his teeth, clutching a deep gash, while goblin and human remains littered the stone floor. The seasoned commander frowned. The brutal clash had completely sapped his men of their strength. It was almost unreal how fast, but physical fatigue wasn't the real issue. Witnessing sheer, unfiltered carnage had utterly shattered the troops' morale. The gruesome image of Eugene casually tearing a goblin's head bare-handed burned in their memories. It had been an absolute gore fest. Weighing the heavy toll, Galfridic seriously considered calling it quits. Maybe this was enough for one day. He glanced up at the resting warrior and asked, "Have we hit our objective for the day, or are we pulling out?" Eugene sighed, genuinely disappointed. "My stamina is still maxed out. Who knows when I'll get another shot at this dungeon? Walking away now. Whoever wants out can head back now." Hearing this, Galfridic's rugged face instantly lit up. "Then we've got your back. We'll ride this out with you." Eugene vaulted down from his perch and pitched a different plan. Galfridic escort the wounded men out of the dungeon first. Caught off guard, the commander nodded, agreeing that the path ahead only required Eugene and a few elite mercenaries. A desperate voice broke the silence. Raben sprinted over, begging, "Please let me go with you." Galfridic scowled at the sight of the battered soldier, his protective instincts kicking in. The mercenaries standing behind Galfridic exhaled heavily, thankful they wouldn't be marched into an early grave. Galfridic let out a long sigh. Beneath that tough, battle-hardened shell beat a heart that genuinely shielded the weak. He stared at Sir Eugene in absolute awe. This young powerhouse was completely rewriting his definition of a true knight. Leaving the main group behind, Eugene, Raben, and Pardek ventured deeper into the abyss, stepping beneath a massive canopy of cobwebs. Raben trembled violently, white-knuckling his torch. "Damn it, I didn't want any part of this. How the hell did I get roped into this suicide mission? I am literally going to die." He swallowed, hard, desperately trying to calm his racing heart by recalling how effortlessly Eugene had butchered the goblin horde. "If things go south, that monster will bail us out, right?" Crunch. Raben's boot snapped something on the ground, and his blood ran cold. Eugene glanced down at the shivering soldier's foot, silently gesturing for him to lift it. Plastered beneath his sole was a pulverized arachnid, oozing sickening neon-green sludge. Instantly, the cavern ceiling erupted, as an endless swarm of monstrous spiders descended on thick, silken threads. These things were pure nightmare fuel, sporting colossal fangs, razor-sharp talons, and bulging blood-red eyes that dominate. Their armored shells looked jagged, leathery, and utterly revolting. This specific dungeon breed hunted in massive swarms, melting their victims alive with highly corrosive acid. Raben shrieked like a banshee as the crawling horrors closed in on them. Pardek immediately called for a tactical fallback. "There's way too many. We need to retreat now." Eugene tilted his head, genuinely confused. Retreat. Without missing a beat, he lunged straight into the swarm, slicing through a massive wave of arachnids to carve out a bloody path. He casually swatted them away, like they were nothing more than annoying gnats. Pardek barked, "Raben, back him up! Move!" But Raben was already frantically swatting at a handful of venomous creepers. "He's already deep in the kill zone," Raben screamed back, utterly. Pardek gritted his teeth and launched into the fray, his blade flashing without a... Operating in overdrive, the trio systematically shredded through the venomous vanguard. But Raben stumbled. In a split second, an ocean of arachnids completely swarmed him, pinning him to the cold cavern floor. A toxic, razor-fanged arachnid launched itself through the air. Rabin scrambled backward, completely paralyzed by sheer... His throat seized up, choking back a terrified shriek. This was really it. But right as the fatal shadow dropped, a savior materialized. Rabin clamped his eyelids tight, bracing for the lethal strike, before slowly peeking up at the towering figure. It was Sir Eugene, their legendary champion. "Get me out of here!" Eugene tore through the cavern, an unstoppable force of absolute destruction. Rabin gasped for air, his chest violently heaving. He gazed around the slaughterhouse in sheer disbelief, barely processing his own survival. Mutilated carcasses littered the blood-soaked ground, stacked into grotesque, towering mounds. With a sickening crunch, Eugene decimated yet another beast. Rabin dragged himself up. "Good grief, is this guy the real monster here?" he thought, utterly awestruck. "He is completely unstoppable. You wiped out a whole army. Can we please just head home?" Rabin spun toward Pardek, desperate for backup. "The captain agrees, right?" When silence greeted him, panic clawed at Rabin's chest. "Captain," he glanced down. Pardek's knees were shaking so violently he could barely stand. The man's face was totally drained of color. How the heck is a nightmare like this lurking down here? Even among the exact same breed, these creatures possessed a strict hierarchy, but running into a top-tier apex predator was practically a myth. Because of that, scouting squads never packed the heavy gear for a threat like this. Pardek's mind frantically raced, as dread, that terrifying colossal frame, proved it without a doubt this was the absolute pinnacle of cave arachnids. From the pitch-black ceiling above, a massive, gruesome talon breached the shadows. The broodmother, a gargantuan, sickeningly grotesque beast, descended, gnashing jaws that dripped with lethal venom. Its horrific maw tore wide open, whipping a disgusting tongue through the air. The massive threat thrashed with pure fury, locking onto its prey. Pardek screamed over the deafening chaos. "Sir Eugene, fall back! We are totally useless against a Supreme Lord. At least hold out until Sir Galferdic arrives for backup." Eugene's voice cut through the cavern, freezing and absolute. Pardek, Rabin, his eyes flashed with a lethal warning. "Both of you back off. This trophy belongs to me." Pardek immediately dipped his head. "Understood, sir." But inside he was completely freaking out. What is this overwhelming terror? Every single fiber of his being was screaming at him to sprint for his life. He and Rabin bolted into the darkness. Back in the death zone, Eugene faced the Titan solo. A tiny aquatic spirit popped up scoffing. "Amateurs. Your survival instincts just got completely crushed by the massive power gap with your boss." Eugene glanced at Miriam, asking if this abomination outclassed the swamp ruler. Miriam firmly shook her head. "Nope. Honestly, she might be way deadlier than that swamp boss." Eugene just shrugged it off with a cool smirk. "Well, that just means her magic core is going to be massive." Across the cavern, the towering arachnid stood its ground, completely clueless about the brutal execution. The beast shrieked, snapping its horrific jaws, while the swordsman just stared dead ahead. "Go ahead. Thrash around all you like. The tougher the vault is to crack, the sweeter the loot inside." The intense chaos suddenly cut to a tiny crawler, weaving a silk thread quietly dropping from the ceiling. Slash! A blinding flash of steel ripped through the air, cleanly amputating its squirming limbs. The crippled bug was blasted backward. Eugene did not even flinch, his expression totally frozen. With a casual snap of his fingers, he watched the pest breathe its last. Naturally, the artist completely skipped drawing the epic boss battle between our guy and the monstrous queen. Eugene's mind drifted back to the secondary perk he had unlocked after absorbing the ruler's crystal. The ultimate disguise ability. While my physical enhancement skill was mainly built for hardcore defense, fusing it with this illusion to mimic a human shell let me finally step out into broad daylight. Because of that neat trick, I do not have to scurry around dodging the scorching sun anymore. Suddenly a sweet female voice chimed in. "Hey, did you finally ditch that mask of yours?" A whole crowd of girls immediately flocked around him, totally mesmerized. "Wait, you covered up this insanely gorgeous face. Keeping these killer looks a secret is an app." The room buzzed with endless chatter. "Sir Knight, you simply must recount your latest dungeon conquest." A swarm of young women closed in, practically swooning. "Rumor has it you slaughtered that colossal arachnid all by yourself." Eugene stiffened, completely mortified. Right above his head, a water sprite materialized, bursting into roaring laughter. "Oh man, boss, you're an absolute beast," the creature mocked. "Go on, regale." One of the maidens flushed a deep crimson. "Your features are incredibly striking. Is it possible you have elven ancestry?" Eugene grimaced inwardly. Elf folks usually jump straight to royal lineage. Honestly, this attention is more of a headache than a compliment. The musicians behind Galferdic abruptly halted their tune. He threw his arms up, bellowing, "Well, that explains everything." The entire tavern jumped, whipping their heads toward the boisterous man. He began weaving his tale, claiming that the second they breached the dungeon, the boss's eyes had glowed fiercely like burning lanterns. Hearing as sharp as a hunting hound, lightning-fast reflexes, and a spear-throwing force that was downright terrifying. "I knew right then and there you were far from average." Bubbling with excitement, Galferdic clutched his compass in one hand and hoisted a frothy mug of ale with the other, strutting right into the cluster of ladies. Who would have guessed the guy had elven magic pumping through his veins? He squinted, scrutinizing Eugene closely. With a face like that, blending in is impossible. How exactly did you fly under the radar for so long? Eugene suppressed a groan. This guy's intuition is dangerously sharp. Leaning forward, Eugene rested his chin gracefully against his hand. With an effortless shrug, he murmured, "Honestly, I never bothered." His devastating charm left the entire table utterly speechless for a heartbeat. Even Rabine turned a bright shade of pink. The surrounding women could only gasp, fanning themselves, as they murmured in awe. Galferdic masked his smirk, with a hand maintaining a deadpan look as he muttered. A quiet sigh escaped Eugene's lips. Do people really just blurt out every single thought that crosses their mind? Whatever. Next time anyone gets suspicious, I'll just ride the whole elven ancestor. Flashing back to his brutal clash with the spider matriarch, his victory had yielded a pulsating magic stone. This particular crystal didn't just surge him with raw power. It also triggered a bizarre reaction, fading his mysterious ink away. The marking near his eye completely dissolved. In its wake, a flood of fragmented alien memories crashed into his consciousness. I was standing in a bizarre realm, sporting an entirely different look. A gentle hand intertwined with mine in that surreal void. A bell echoed through the air, and suddenly countless eyes were locked onto me. Eugene wrestled with the vision. Who exactly was that mysterious woman lingering in my mind? A chilling realization quickly overshadowed his curiosity. Were those visions even mine to begin with? He squeezed his eyes shut. With his history completely wiped clean, these fractured glimpses, Lord Eugene, help, get him off me. A desperate shriek snapped him right back to brutal reality. He glanced over at Galferdic, while continuous cries of "please save me" pierced the air. Galferdic had Rabine trapped in a merciless chokehold. "You absolute moron, I heard everything. You actually called his presence a burden." Rabine clawed helplessly at the massive arm, desperately gasping out excuses. "I only meant the boss isn't human. Any normal guy would have bolted ages ago." Galferdic tightened his grip, totally unforgiving. "Oh, so now you're calling the boss a freak of nature? I'm going to show you what pure..." Tuning them out, Eugene sank back into his thoughts. Up until now, my name was my only anchor. But after this whole ordeal, the scattered puzzle pieces are finally starting to connect. If I can just hunt down the rest and wipe away every last tattoo, I might actually unlock the absolute truth. Not this fake knight persona. Not a subtle tremor shook his gaze at the sheer magnitude of that revelation. The scene shifted to a somber chamber, where a crowd hovered anxiously around a sick bed. Both Galfridic and Eugene stood among the gathered men. Galfridic dipped into a deep, respectful bow. "It is an absolute privilege to make your acquaintance, Lord Tywin. I am Krima, the third-born son of Gangetic." Mirroring Galfridic's flawless etiquette, Eugene dipped into a deep bow. "I am Yan, eldest son of the Eugene family." The seated lord nodded in glowing approval. "Indeed, you have proven your worth. Hand it over." Resting on the polished metal was a pristine, wax-sealed parchment. "Word reached me that Sir Eugene requires official documentation to verify his lineage. I am uncertain if this entirely resolves your plight, but it serves as absolute confirmation of who you are. Jan of House Eugene." Eugene delicately retrieved the crisp scroll from the tray. "You have my deepest gratitude, my lord." Suddenly, a fierce, ragged cry abruptly... Chimera sprinted frantically to Tywin's bedside. The fading patriarch fluttered his exhausted eyelids and wheezed, "Kamara? Thanks to that boy's blind ambition, your younger brother will never find peace in the grave." Kamara gently stroked his father's trembling arm. "Rest easy, Dad. I swear I will protect the territory you bled to build." He tightly gripped Tywin's frail fingers. The old man locked eyes with his heir and rasped, "My dearest boy, that territory is nothing but a mountain of worthless black ash. Never forget. A true leader commands the hearts of his people, not just the dirt beneath their feet." Farrell and the surrounding retainers bowed their heads, absorbing the dying lord's heavy final wisdom. With that final breath, Tywin's grip went completely limp. He was gone. A wave of profound grief washed over the grieving subjects. Observing from the sidelines, Eugene pondered. He had no clue how Tywin actually ruled, but the overwhelming sorrow proved he... However, not every tear shed that day was born of sorrow. Lurking out in the corridor, Bertil aggressively gnawed his bottom lip. His face twisted in pure, outside the heavens began to bruise. Ominous black thunderclouds swarmed the horizon, silently whispering of the chaos yet to come. Packing his gear, Galfridic prepared to ride out. "I apologize for vanishing in the middle of your father's wake." Kamara offered a tired, understanding nod. "I know you have pressing matters to attend to." Galfridic then shot a bewildered glance at his fellow warrior. "Sir Eugene, are you seriously planning to stick around this bleak place?" Eugene's jaw was set with absolute resolve. "I am diving back into that dungeon. Cracking that hellhole open just to walk away would be a massive waste." Galfridic rubbed the back of his neck, flashing a crooked grin. "Man, what a tragedy. Count Evergrow would have treated a talent like yours like absolute royalty." He firmly thrust his hand out toward the young swordsman. With total sincerity, Galfridic boomed. "Fighting shoulder to shoulder with a beast of a knight like you was a genuine privilege. Let us pray we never cross blades on opposite sides of a battlefield." Eugene stared quietly at the veteran's calloused palm. He didn't hesitate. Eugene gripped the knight's forearm with a powerful, vice-like squeeze. A silent, mutual respect ignited between the two warriors. Rabin hovered near the gates, vigorously waving him off. "Safe travels, Sir Galfridic." Turning on his heel, Eugene barked at Pardek to pack up their camp immediately. The subordinate, "Right away, sir." Philip blinked in utter confusion. "Wait, hold on. Didn't you just tell him we were staying here?" Ignoring the question entirely, Pardek mused aloud. "Speaking of which," Philip scratched his chin. "On horseback." Pardek nodded sharply. "Exactly. A proper knight commands a steed. Therefore our priority is securing a mount for the master, then hitting the merchant guild to cash in our monster drops." Philip's eyes lit up like fireworks. "Oh, then I am officially stepping up as your totally loyal, hard-working squire." Eugene shot the over-eager tagalong a chilling, deathly glare. "I will not be needing a single ounce of your help anytime soon." Philip froze, his jaw dropping. "Wait, what the heck is that supposed to mean?" Boom. Smash cut. Fast forward to Philip miserable and sweating bullets on a dusty construction site. He barely hoisted a heavy timber crate before a foreman screamed, Hey, slacker, put your back into it. Meanwhile, miles away in the sprawling a massive trade vessel slammed against the docks. A massive crowd gathered, jaws hitting the floor, as they stared at whispers rippled through the stunned onlookers. Wait, did a single solitary knight actually drag all of this back? Raben crossed his arms, puffing his chest out with a booming, victorious laugh. You bet. The crowd lost their minds. Holy crap, isn't that the rookie powerhouse who wiped out those monstrous hounds over in Lord Tywin's territory? Wait, the savage kid who snapped a vicious beast's neck with his bare hands? Catching a greedy onlooker, Raben jabbed his finger and roared, "Hey, merchant!" Philip tilted his head toward the glaring sky, thick beads of sweat rolling down his face. He wiped his brow, grumbling internally. Sir Eugene, this little tale of yours is dragging on forever. Just then a smooth voice echoed from inside the room. Put your worries to rest. Lord Eugene, I am Billmore, speaking on behalf of the Palin Guild, the most powerful merchant syndicate around. Allow me the absolute honor of liquidating every last piece of your massive loot. Eugene pierced Billmore with a heavy, calculating stare. Initially, he had seriously doubted Pardek's merchant connections. He honestly never anticipated dealing with a massive corp, which was perfect. A colossal syndicate like them was exactly what an outsider like him needed. Billmore's desperate, honeyed voice kept filling the room. Leveraging my decades of expertise, I will crush the raw material costs down to rock bottom. Just grant me an exclusive contract. I swear on my life you won't regret it. Suddenly heavy boots echoed down the hall. The door violently swung open, revealing a smug figure who demanded coldly, "Which one of you is this supposed knight Eugene?" Eugene didn't even flinch, lazily resting his chin on his knuckles. Beside him, Pardek leaned in, his voice dropping to a frantic, "Lord Eugene, things are about to get really messy." Eugene tilted his head, completely unbothered. "Why?" Pardek swallowed hard. "That guy is the personal secretary to the Palin Vice Guild leader." Eugene instantly cut him off. "And give me the short version." Pardek wiped his sweating palms. "I mean, he completely outranks Billmore. He holds way more authority. It looks like he stepped in to hijack your loot for pennies, hoping to snatch a permanent profit stream for himself. You need to watch your back right now." Pardek's eyes darted nervously. "Seriously, be careful." Billmore flashed a painfully stiff smile and stammered, Mr. Grail? Sir Eugene is currently in a private negotiation with me." Grail brutally cut him down. "Know your place, Billmore. You cannot beat me. Besides, I don't see any ink on a contract yet." Grail shifted his arrogant gaze. "Lord Eugene, your little legend is the talk of the town. They claim the fierce knight who snapped the hounds' necks has hoarded a literal mountain of treasure, though obviously that is just a pathetic rumor cooked up to inflate your prices. A blatant, childish scam to squeeze out more coin. However, our Vice Guild leader is willing to offer you a highly exclusive deal. Ditch this pathetic dump and follow me." He smirked, fully intending to bleed this brainless, muscle-bound rookie dry. But instantly Grail's smug smirk froze, dread washing over his face. Eugene was glaring holes right through him, radiating absolute murder. "And what makes—" Panic flashed in Grail's eyes. "Oh. Forgive my terrible manners. I am Grail, the personal secretary to the Vice Guild leader. This is an incredibly rare opportunity for you, my lord." Eugene's voice dropped to a terrifying, icy growl. "An opportunity for what, exactly?" Grail stammered out. "For a significantly better payout on your loot, of course." Eugene didn't blink, his piercing, dead-eyed stare locking onto the shivering. "Better terms?" Eugene echoed darkly. Grail's face dripped with cold sweat. Yes, our Vice Guild leader wants to manage your account personally." Eugene's eyes widened into a manic, blood-chilling glare. The sheer, suffocating pressure radiating from the knight left the arrogant secretary dizzy and gasping for air. "If I crossed a line, I deeply apologize," Grail choked out, trembling wildly. "I swear I meant absolute zero disrespect." Eugene's dark, rumbling voice echoed like a death sentence. "Disrespect?" Utterly terrified, Grail spun on his heels and bolted for the door. I am so sorry, I will come back another time. Watching him flee, Billmore practically burst into tears. My lord, You actually rejected the vice guild leader just to protect my deal? You did that for me? I swear on my very life, I will back you to the end. Just name your price. I will do absolutely anything for you. Eugene raised an eyebrow, genuinely amused. Oh, really? Now that is an attitude. Billmore's eyes sparkled with desperate hope. So, when do we begin? Eugene slowly stood up, his face shifting back to a cold, merciless deadpan. What do you mean, when? Get the hell out of my room. Pretzella raised an eyebrow. Did he actually reject our offer? Grail dipped into a low bow, his voice laced with shame. I apologize for the embarrassment, just as the whispers suggested. He is no pushover. She shifted her gaze toward the window, eyes narrowing. Relax. Lift your chin, Grail. She brushed it off smoothly. Knights love to make things difficult for us merchants, just to stroke their own egos, so we will just play our own game and make him sweat. In our world, coin and inventory rule everything, especially when dealing with a dirt-poor warrior who cannot even scrape together enough copper for a half-decent steed. Pay Eugene a little visit tonight. Bring him a care package, the kind a starving knight would be an absolute fool to turn down. Philip's jaw dropped in disbelief. Wait, you are benching me? You expect me to just sit around flipping this mountain of loot? Eugene locked eyes with him, his tone completely deadpan. You heard me perfect. Keep hustling those beast parts I hauled into the guild. Panic flashed across the squire's face. But why am I getting left behind again? Is it because I am too weak to watch your back out there? If that is it, I will start swinging a sword this exact second. Eugene sliced right through his rambling. Philip, tell me what exactly is a slave's true purpose? Philip slumped his shoulders, mumbling quietly. To back up their master in combat and manage the daily chores. Spot on, Eugene replied without missing a beat. Right now your job as my slave is playing support. Liquidate those battle trophies and stack up our funds. That is the exact mission I am handing down to you. Hash out the fine print with Billmore. He will show you the ropes of the market. Philip stared at the dirt, a heavy realization sinking in. Honestly, if it were not for Sir Eugene, he would be vulture food by now. Whining about a simple task like this was just downright pathetic. Eugene tossed him a bone. And hey, once you rake in enough gold, I might actually show you how to handle a blade. Eventually, I am going to need you out there, in the blood and mud with me. A rush of warmth hit Philip's face, deeply moved by the unexpected promise. A faint, grateful smile cracked across his lips as he pressed a hand to his heart. Your word is my command, Sir Eugene, he murmured with total devotion. Cut to Yan and Pardek, casually wandering through the bustling streets. Catch you later, boss, they called out. Eugene dangled a completely deflated coin purse in the air. Seriously, does cash always evaporate this fast even when I am barely spending a dime? I am literally dead broke. Miriam clutched the pathetic little bag, whining dramatically. Your funds are drained, and my soul is crushed right along with it. Boss tell me we are going to bounce back from this soon. Suddenly Eugene stopped dead in his tracks. His eyes locked onto a brilliant display, a massive, masterfully forged suit of armor. Pardek whistled in admiration. Oh man. Heavy plate. The ultimate fantasy. Eugene blinked, taken aback. A fantasy? Let me guess. It costs a fortune? Pardek shook his head. Way beyond just expensive. That right there is a holy grail. Even filthy rich knights would not dare scrap it. They guard it like a sacred family heirloom. Out of nowhere, Rabin came sprinting down the cobblestones, screaming at the top of his lungs. Sir Eugene, emergency. We've got a massive stampede of giant roamers breaching the borders of Marin. Those beasts from the eastern woods are pushing straight into the city limits. The local garrison is fighting tooth and nail to hold the line. Pardek cracked his knuckles. Think it is time we jump into the meat grinder and thin the herd. Eugene blinked, realizing both of his companions were staring dead at Rabin with a bizarre intensity. See, unlike clearing out a random tax-free monster den, this was Marin, a booming trade hub, absolutely dripping with gold. It was the absolute perfect hotspot to auction off rare drops for top dollar, all without paying a single cent in transport fees. Translation. This was a golden ticket to rake in millions. A wicked, shadow-drenched grin spread across Eugene's face. Gear up. We are not missing out on this paycheck. But right as they moved, a heavy boot stomped into view, cutting them off. Hold it right there. Pardek's eyes, he doubled over violently, sucking in air. No, hold on. Just wait. Why are you all panting like dogs? Grail broke the heavy silence. The Vice Guildmaster dispatched me to gift you this war stallion. The beast boasted a sleek, pitch-black coat. Every single muscle flexed beneath its velvet skin, looking practically carved by divine hands. A flawless, purebred charger. His eyes instantly narrowed. The Vice Guildmaster gifted this to me. The fierce glare made the messenger physically recoil in terror. We don't expect any favors in return. His brow furrowed into a furious scowl as he glared viciously right back at him. Cold sweat beaded down the envoy's pale cheeks. It is merely a humble gesture of our... Without hesitating, he vaulted directly into the saddle. Pass along my gratitude to your boss. Miriam instantly took to the skies, trailing right behind him, absolutely eager to rake in the cash. Rabin's mentor dropped his jaw, jabbing a finger forward. He just bolted. What's our move? The captain is practically flying. We'll never close the gap. Pardek roared with pure rage. What are you idiots standing around for? He took off, so go after him. Rabin scrambled into action. Yes, sir. Grail remained rooted to the spot, quietly observing their silhouettes fade into the distance. Meanwhile, a deadly threat was brewing inside the eastern timberlands. Right on the fringes of Marin, the goblin horde abruptly stopped dead in their tracks, whipping their ugly heads around. Thunderous hoofbeats tore wildly through the dense, shadowy woodland. Eugene was a blur of motion, ruthlessly slicing through the monsters one by one with his gleaming blade. Miriam giggled with absolute thrill. Master, check out that roaming horde to the east. It is absolutely massive. Did someone already clear out the vanguard? His piercing gaze practically over... Perfect. I don't exactly make it a habit to split my loot. Thick, suffocating dust clouds violently churned through the deep depths of the woods. The heavy galloping continued to hammer the earth without a single pause. Golden rays of sunlight finally managed to pierce through the thick canopy overhead. Eugene finally pulled back on the reins. As he emerged into the blinding clearing, an absolutely brutal bloodbath was already underway. Madrika was currently trapped, completely boxed in by the enemy. Unless you strike me down, you freaks aren't taking a single step for... Massive, golem-like beasts charged recklessly ahead, their crimson eyes blazing with pure malice. Madrika's mount entirely lost its footing, sending both rider and beast crashing violently into the dirt. Blind panic seized the stallion, causing it to sprint away and abandon its master. Agony racked his battered body. I, Madrika, Knight of Justice, swear upon the very glory of Marin. Out of nowhere, a massive blade forcefully impaled the earth right beside him. Madrika shuddered, paralyzed by overwhelming terror. Turning to face the swarm of goblins closing in, Madrika let out a pathetic, desperate wail. Suddenly, a lethal projectile blasted outward from a rapidly approaching shadow. Eugene's expression went ice cold, his piercing gaze locking onto his next targets. His sword became a whirlwind of steel, brutally butchering the hulking goblins, one after another. Madrika stayed glued to the ground, his eyes blown wide as he watched the massacre. Meanwhile, Eugene expertly maneuvered his stallion through the scattered bloody carcasses. Madrika let out a breathless, shaky laugh. I owe you my life. Please, what is your name? Eugene completely ignored the question. He merely flicked his wrist, casually swinging his blood-soaked steed. In a flash, he decapitated a sneaky goblin that was lunging straight for Madrika's exposed back. Madrika scrambled backward, shaking like a leaf. My name, like that matters right now. If we get slaughtered in this pit, knowing who I am won't do you any good. An endless tide of monsters was steadily closing in. Fair point, if we actually crawl out of this hellhole alive. I'll properly ask you then. As we pushed toward the great trade city, Hundreds of goblins swarmed us like a plague of locusts, but we fought tooth and nail until the very end. In our absolute darkest hour, that ruthless warrior carved through the entire horde without breaking a sweat. Naturally, I played my part to perfection. When the dust finally settled, we stood victorious, keeping the city of Marin completely safe. Out of nowhere, a voice called out in the crowd. "So, who exactly is that warrior?" Madrika flashed a knowing smirk. "Dying to know, aren't you?" Pointing a dramatic finger, he declared with absolute gravity, "That man right there is Yan Eugene." A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Wait, isn't that the legendary swordsman who obliterated the dungeon in the Tywin territory? Rumor has it he ripped the spine straight out of a rabid hellhound while it was still breathing. That legendary warrior defended our home. Sir Yan Eugene is the ultimate savior of Marin. A feverish chant erupted through the chaotic streets. Yan Eugene, Yan Eugene. Gazing down from his lavish window, Louis Palin murmured, "The entire capital is absolutely obsessed with this mysterious warrior. But remember, the higher his star rises, the more difficult he becomes to leash." Once the ruthless boss of the Palin trade syndicate, Louis now ruled as Marin's undisputed mayor. "Are we seriously just gonna let him run wild?" he muttered. Stepping from the shadows, his stunning niece, Priscilla, offered a graceful curtsy. "Everything is moving exactly according to my script. Frankly, I want Lord Eugene's legend to grow even larger, because the brighter a warrior's spotlight shines, the more terrified they become of watching it fade into the dark. Speaking of which, what do we know about that little shadow trailing behind him?" Palin pressed on. "You mean the errand boy dropping off his monster loot at the syndicate?" She flashed a wicked smile. "Bingo. My spies dug up some dirt. That brat? He's the hidden illegitimate heir of the Tywin bloodline." The mayor spun around, eyes wide with shock. "Whoa." Priscilla smoothly laid out the puzzle pieces. "While the knight's true endgame remains a mystery, it's glaringly obvious he's grinding for gold in our city, all to fund the survival of that bastard Tywin child. If we play our cards right, and wrap them both around our fingers, we're basically shaking hands with absolute power. We are talking about the kid destined to sit on the Tywin throne." Palin chuckled, clapping his hands. "Brilliant. That is my brilliant niece for you. I see the web you're spinning. We buy the loyalty of a heavyweight champion who in turn guards the future king. Then I need to shower Sir Eugene with some heavy metal. As the mayor of this fine city, it's only right I reward the gladiator who crushed our monster problem. I'll set you up as the official peacekeeper. Milk this opportunity for all it's worth." Priscilla bowed her head, a venomous smirk playing on her lips. "Understood." As twilight bled into pitch black, thick shadows swallowed the grandiose estate. A manicured finger elegantly traced the rim of a porcelain teacup. A parched man will always crawl back to the oasis, which means a true hustler only has one job to do. Her ruby lips curled into a predatory sneer. "We dig the well, set the bait, and simply wait in the shadows." Heavy rhythmic footsteps echoed down the grand hallway, marching straight into her web. Right on cue, the massive oak doors groaned open. Eugene stepped into the dim light. "I'll just watch them drown in the very water I sell them," she thought to herself. Masking her venomous thoughts with a flawless smile, Priscilla gestured elegantly. "Welcome, my lord." Clad in heavy, unyielding steel stood the Titan who ripped Marin from the jaws of death, Sir Yan Eugene. His voice was a low rumble. "I am here to pay my respects. You must be Priscilla, the second in command of the Palin Syndicate." "Correct," she nodded gracefully. "Spot on. I am the deputy director here. Please, take a seat." Her eyes scanned his stoic features. "Is this icicle of a man really the same bloodthirsty brute who smashed those hounds to a pulp?" she wondered. His gaze was dead and frosty, radiating a dangerous aura, completely alien to the arrogant nobles she usually played. The mayor's lavish bribe hugged his muscular frame perfectly. A masterclass piece forged in the blazing infernos of Marin's elite blacksmiths. It was hammered out of a lethal cocktail of Elsic iron and crushed goblin bone, boasting a shell so impenetrable not even the grinding fangs of a dragon could scratch its surface. Leaning in, Priscilla purred. "How does the gear feel?" Eugene offered a slow, indifferent shrug. Yeah, it does the job. Honestly, throwing this on will definitely give me a solid peace of mind before diving into my next death trap. And I owe you for the 5-star beds and the feasts. You've got my mercs completely fired up. Let's hope this momentum translates to a massive payout on the battlefield. I definitely wasn't waiting for a handout, but I respect the hospitality. Priscilla's lips parted into a chillingly sweet smile. Eugene abruptly pushed himself out of his chair. Getting back to my offer, she began, but he instantly cut her off. I'm booked solid. We're done here. Priscilla blinked in sheer disbelief. Wait, you're bailing already? Eugene shot back with an icy glare. Come find me once you've actually scrubbed the Taiwan family's dungeon clean. That's just a walk in the park. Nope, here's the deal. My paperwork strictly covers this loot exchange. Chances are, this is the last time we cross paths. Moving forward, I am entirely focused on hoarding mana crystals. Giving her the cold shoulder, he spun on his heel and marched toward the exit. Fine then. But Priscilla's temper flared. Hold it right there, she shrieked. His piercing eyes went dead, and he slowly snapped his head back over his shoulder to lock eyes with her. She crossed her arms. We are not even close to finished here. He narrowed his eyes into a deadly squint and growled, Care to elaborate? Priscilla pressed her advantage. You cannot play dumb forever. Top-tier demon mountain gear, a purebred steed straight from the nobility, 5-star suites, and massive feasts for your entire mercenary crew. The monster drops. You flip to our guild every single day. Wouldn't even put a dent in half that tab. Billmore and Grail hung back, absorbing every single tense word of the standoff. She leaned in closer. Do not sit there and act clueless. Nothing in this world is free. Or did you skip that lesson at the academy? Because right now, you look like a cheap knight who threw away his honor. How would the adoring citizens of Moran react? Eugene's relentless gaze washed over her. Marin's beloved hero, Sir Yan, Priscilla pleaded. Just do me this favor. Are you really walking away right now? Sir Yan Eugene, I am begging you. Just tell me your side of the story. A tiny twitch played at the corner of his mouth like he was fighting the urge to bite back. Suddenly a wicked smirk stretched across Eugene's face. Hilarious. You really think you can bark orders at me on day one? You force a bunch of luxury handouts on me that I never even asked for. And now you have the nerve to demand— Who do you think you are? A 2-bit peddler trying to blackmail a knight? His venomous tones sliced through the air. Eugene stepped closer. You must have severely misread this situation. Let me spell it out for you. I couldn't care less if the entire population of Marin drags my name through the mud. But you were right about one thing. Everything comes with a steep price. Go ahead. Run your mouth to the public and you'll find out exactly what that cost looks like. Listen closely, Deputy Director of the Paling Guild. The way I see it, you and your entire guild are teaming up with the city to exploit the very guy who dragged Moran back from the brink. Keep pulling stunts like this. The next time a crisis hits, good luck finding a single knight willing to draw their sword for this wretched town. We are absolutely done here. I'm out. Pardek pivoted on his heel and sighed. Forgive his harshness, Deputy. This is a massive letdown. If you had just played your cards right, we actually could have built a solid alliance. Billmore nervously tracked the shifting shadows on Priscilla's face, but then she suddenly broke the silence. Sir Yan Eugene, hold on a second. I completely crossed the line. As Priscilla, the deputy of the Palin Trade Guild's local branch, I offer you my deepest, most sincere apologies, Eugene. I let my own selfish greed cloud my judgment and tried to bully my way into control. To make up for this absolute disrespect, I am begging for a fresh start with you, Sir Eugene. We will keep Billmore's current deal rolling and throw in some heavy-hitting perks. I swear on my life you will not have to stress about a single thing. I am utterly sick of weak-willed knights who cave for a flashy bribe. Most of them are just mindless glory hounds chasing a quick buck, but this guy is a totally different breed. Eugene's gaze was razor-sharp and utterly lethal. He was way too much of a wild card to mess around with. Maybe that's exactly why my merchant instincts are screaming at me to never let him slip away. Without warning, Priscilla shot her gaze upward. Eugene leaned in, his voice steady. All right, let's hear what you're offering. Shadows crossed his expression, though he knew the deal was too good to pass up. Pressing a hand over her heart, Priscilla offered a relieved smile. I appreciate you overlooking my blunder. Priscilla touched her chest, smiling warmly. Thank you for letting my slip-up slide. Honestly, a true knight needed gleaming steel and a sturdy stallion to really look the part. It sounded a little cliché, sure. But this kingdom genuinely took the crown for breathtaking scenery. Pardek peeked over, adding, the terms seem rock solid. He glanced down, raising an eyebrow. Are you agreeing with this? Giving a firm nod, Pardek continued. Exactly. The Phelan Guild is a massive powerhouse. Headquartered right out of Marin, they operate hundreds of branches empire-wide, dealing almost exclusively, just like the Tai Wen clan. Take their offer to grant us unlimited access to dungeons and labyrinths connected to their network. That right there is an absolute... Honestly, scoring a perk like that beats getting slapped with a fancy noble title. Pardek was buzzing with energy. A masterclass in bargaining, Sir Eugene. Meanwhile, Eugene's face scrunched up in annoyance. I'm only agreeing to wrap this up, he muttered. Out of nowhere, a harsh voice interrupted. You honestly believe strapping on shiny plating makes you a real knight? Look at this pretty boy. Bet he can barely even lift a blade. Miriam immediately fired back. Excuse me? Care to repeat? Kamara stepped up, waving with a welcoming grin. Perfect timing, you guys. Caught off guard, Eugene blinked. Whoa, Lord Kamara, or wait, should I be calling you Lord Taiwen now? The man chuckled softly. Call me whatever you want. Man, you've grown completely unrecognizable. How have things been on your end? Eugene pressed. Kamara sighed heavily. Well, my little brother is still refusing to back down. He actually went and recruited a fresh batch of sellswords, but this time around, the vibe is totally wrong. Eugene narrowed it. Kamara went on. You recall those thugs my brother paid to hunt down field, the ones that ended up shredded by wolves. From what I remember, they were absolute bottom feeders. Well, this new crew radiates the exact same grimy energy. Piercing eyes locked onto the newcomers, scanning them from head to toe, absorbing every little red flag. Because of that, Kamara stated, I need you leading the charge for this dungeon raid, Sir Eugene. Another abrasive voice barked out. Hold on a second, Lord Tywin. When this kid drops dead down there, does that make me the new boss? Kamara shot him a baffled glare. What kind of Maverick smirked. Just laying out the facts, sir. We aren't packing for a pleasant stroll. Down in the abyss, human life is basically worthless. We've got to be ready for anything. His expression turned icy, silently daring the young knight to prove his worth. Dripping with arrogance, Maverick dragged out his words to make sure the insult landed perfectly. Captain Eugene calmly pivoted. Fair enough. If I bite the dust, this loudmouth takes the wheel. Kamara stood there stunned. The agitator sneered. Now that we have a backup plan, let's get moving. Miriam aggressively jabbed a finger in his direction. Oh my God, I already despise this guy. I know, Eugene murmured, his tone dropping to freezing. This has Bertles to eliminate me in the shadows. But if things go south for those idiots, this could actually turn into a really fun show. Flash forward, and Eugene's razor-sharp blade was already tearing through enemies, dropping them one by one. Mangled bodies littered every single inch of the damp cavern floor. Eugene's blade became a merciless blur, carving through enemies without a split second of hesitation. Maverick observed from the shadows, realizing the terrifying rumors about this guy were absolutely dead on. Taking the vanguard solo against a massive horde, he made our entire squad of heavily armed mercenaries look completely useless. He stood there like an impenetrable towering fortress blocking the way forward. Jealousy flared in Maverick's eyes, his jaw clenching so hard it ached at the sight of Eugene's overwhelming dominance. All he had to do was bide his time lurking for that perfect, lethal just one split-second chance to drag his venom-laced dagger right across that arrogant bastard's throat. Eugene's voice suddenly cut through the chaos. Listen up! We're entering a mid-tier monster zone. Cross this line and your survival is entirely on you. If you've got a death wish, keep walking. Let me make this crystal clear so nobody gets confused. Unless you are absolutely certain you can survive, turn back right now. Maverick stepped up with a sly, sycophantic smirk. If our fearless captain pushes forward, how could we possibly tuck tail and run? This is our golden Rabin let out a hearty chuckle. Hell yeah, count us in. But Pardek quickly threw up a hand. Hold up. We're staying put. Rabin blinked in sheer confusion, but Pardek narrowed his eyes. Can't you tell Sir Eugene clearly has his own hidden agenda here? Leaving the cowards behind, the remaining group plunged deeper into the pitch-black abyss of the dungeon. As he walked, Eugene's mind began to wander. The last time I cleared this hellhole, Goffredick had my back. Man, things are just painfully boring without him around. Flashes of his old comrade surging into battle vividly danced across his memory. Even from just fighting alongside him briefly, I knew the guy was an absolute tactical genius. He knew exactly how to fire up the troops, always diving headfirst into the bloodiest, most lethal spots on the battlefield without a second thought. If he were leading this absolute circus of mercenaries, he'd probably still manage to wipe this entire dungeon completely clean. His boots crunched softly against the gravel. Honestly, it makes me wonder, how exactly would Goffredick deal with these backstabbing rats? So are you finally dropping that pathetic little act of yours? Fine. If you're that desperate to end up in a body bag, I'll gladly do the honors. Panic violently erupted among the mercenaries. What the hell was that? Where is this fire coming from? Over in the corner, Miriam flashed an arrogant smirk, raw magical energy, blazing wildly in his palm. Scorching heat engulfed the vanguard. Scatter! It's a freaking spell! The bastard knows magic! I'm totally blind. Maverick tried to keep his crew from losing their minds, calmly attempting to spark a torch. But absolute, suffocating darkness suddenly swallowed the cavern. Watch where you're swinging, you idiot. I can't see a damn thing. Slipping into the pitch black like a ghost, Eugene began picking them off, one by one. Get a light going, wait. What's that noise? We're being ambushed. They're coming from the shadows. Just swing. Kill anything that moves. Agonized screams echoed violently off the cavern walls. Stop, you morons! You're hacking our own guy! A sinister glowing crimson thread violently constricted around their limbs. My legs are crushed. The abyss rapidly devolved into a symphony of pure, uninterrupted torture. Maverick clamped his jaw shut, cold sweat pouring down his trembling face. This is a total disaster. In this pitch darkness, the bastard has every single advantage. His hands shook violently as he desperately smashed two flintstones together. Spark, damn it. Suddenly, an unnatural chill crawled up Maverick's spine. Locking his muscles in place as a faint noise, heart pounding out of his chest, he forced his neck to slowly, agonizingly, turn around. Why had the entire cavern? The rhythmic, terrifying crunch of Eugene's heavy boots grew louder. Closing in step by a chilling breath brushed right against his ear, whispering softly, "Need a little light? You seem to be struggling, so let me give you a hand. Human vision really is a tragic inconvenience in the dark, isn't it?" A blazing flare suddenly erupted. Well, how's that getting a crystal clear view now? So who's the predator and who's the prey? Let's find out. Maverick stared dead-eyed into the void, a hollow "huh" slipping from his lips. Monster. He dragged out the word. A grotesque smile revealing a mouth packed with razor-sharp fangs. Outside the estate, the heavens ripped open as torrential rain lashed down and thunder rattled the sky. Heavy boots slapped frantically against the wet cobblestones in a desperate sprint for survival. Inside, Kamara's voice cracked with pure panic. "Sir." But Eugene just stood there, completely unfazed, his gaze locked on the raging storm outside. A heavy silence hung in the air, before he lazily shifted his eyes over his shoulder. Bertil looked just as lost. Swallowing hard, Kamara stuttered out, Do you actually buy this?" Eugene's brows knitted together, his glare fixed on the trembling man in front of them. "What kind of absolute circus is this?" he scoffed. "Why don't you ask the mastermind directly?" Eugene snapped. Hear it straight from the horse's mouth. With a sickening thud, a massive muscle-bound body was hurled brutally onto the floorboards. Bertil's jaw practically hit the floor, his eyes bulging in absolute shock. Clawing at his own face, Maverick sobbed uncontrollably. "We were supposed to end him. Bertil ordered me to butcher Ian Eugene." The second his name dropped, Bertil let out a shaky, desperate chuckle. "This lunatic is just spitting garbage," he choked out, frantically backpedaling. He's completely lost his freaking mind. Those excuses snapped Kamara's patience. "Brother," he roared, "are you seriously stooping this low?" Bertel shot him a venomous glare, doubling down. "You need a reality check. You're actually going to trust the psychotic babble of a head case?" "What exactly did you say, Maverick?" Bertil sneered. "Stop beating around the bush and spit it out." Looming menacingly behind the old man, Eugene locked onto Maverick with the terrifying blood-red glare, forcing the words out of him. "What would I have done?" Maverick's voice suddenly went completely hollow as he chanted, "How a worthless piece of trash like me just needs to die." Before anyone could blink, Maverick bolted. Kamara threw out his hands, screaming, "Wait, what the hell are you doing?" But he was a second too late. Maverick crashed violently through the window shards, exploding everywhere as his body launched into the storm. Kamara lunged for the shattered frame, screaming the man's name into the howling wind. A heartbeat later, the old man's plunging body was impaled right on a stone statue's blade, below, sparking absolute hysteria in the room. Sweating bullets, Bertil quickly scrambled to save face. "See, I told you, brother, he completely snapped after watching his crew get shredded like wet tissue." "It would be insane to believe a word he said, right?" Kamara's face darkened with sheer disgust. "Watching you celebrate his suicide only proves how guilty you actually are." That icy accusation left Bertil totally speechless, choking on his own defense. Cornered, Bertil spun around, locking his crosshairs onto a new target. "And you, Ian Eugene, where the hell is your knightly honor? How dare you drag my name through the mud with this unhinged, baseless garbage?" Eugene's expression turned downright lethal as he stepped up. "Bertil, swear on your precious honor as a knight, are you actually innocent?" Trembling like a leaf, the coward still managed to force out, "Damn right I am." In a flash, Eugene raised his blade, his voice echoing with booming authority. "Then Bertil Tywin, in the name of a knight's sacred honor, and for the absolute truth." He leveled his steel right at Bertil's chest, throwing down the ultimate gauntlet. "I challenge you to prove your innocence in a duel." Trapped by his own lies, Bertil could only grind his teeth in silent rage, completely out of options. The scene cuts to the courtyard later that afternoon, where frantic whispers rippled through the gathered crowd. Wait, is the second young master seriously throwing down in the front yard? Good grief, what kind of mess did he stir up now? Rumor has it he hired hitmen. He's always a walking disaster. But this time he's totally crossed the line. Who was the target? The gossiping onlookers watched with bated breath as Eugene and Bertil stepped into the arena. Word on the street is, he tried to take out the Lord's personal mercenary, Sir Ian Eugene himself. With deadly focus, Eugene slowly raised his blade, ready for a bloodbath. Standing on the sidelines, Kamara watched the unfolding clash, anxiety practically eating him alive. He shut his eyes tight, realizing that this bitter feud had passed the point of no return. Only raw violence could separate fact from fiction now, and the ultimate truth would be delivered by the unforgiving judgment of the gods. The camera cuts to Eugene's ice-cold glare. His mind locked entirely on one thing leaving this courtyard. As the undisputed, tearing through the tense silence, Bertil unleashed a guttural roar, bringing his massive blade crashing down. White-knuckling the hilt, he launched himself forward, like a predator closing in for the kill. Yet Eugene didn't even flinch. He simply raised his own steel, casually blocking the path. The two weapons collided in a blinding shower of sparks and a deafening metallic shriek. Ripping his blade away, Bertil immediately coiled back for a devastating upward slash. He poured every ounce of his desperate strength into the relentless assault. But Eugene remained an unmovable wall. Out of nowhere, a sudden memory flashed through Eugene's mind, making his deadly gaze waver just a fraction. He was dragged right back to the exact moment Bertil had delivered that frantic report. "We tracked down a bloodsucker. I'm sending the intel up the chain right now." Snapping back to the brutal reality of the duel, Jan Eugene's voice dropped to a freezing whisper. "I've had pathetic hounds like you chasing my shadow for over a decade." The sheer weight of those words paralyzed Bertil, as a suffocating wave of genuine terror gripped his. Punishing that split second of hesitation, Eugene ruthlessly cleaved his weapon downward. The crushing impact violently shoved Bertel backward, across, grinding his teeth in pure frustration. He shot a panicked glance at his trembling hands. But before he could even react, a flawless parry ripped the sword right out of his grip, sending it spinning into the sky before burying itself deep into the earth. Bertel's knees buckled, hitting the ground hard. Above him, Eugene's eyes ignited with a demonic crimson glow, his voice dripping with pure slaughter. Now, die. Completely paralyzed by dread, the defeated warrior could only stare wide-eyed at his... Watching from the sidelines, Kamara had always believed his brother's blade work was top tier. But right now, anyone watching could see the absolute horror washing over the older sibling, as his little brother was systematically dismantled. In that agonizing heartbeat, the truth slammed into Kamara. Jan Eugene was a completely different breed of monster. He could physically feel the suffocating, bloodthirsty aura radiating off Eugene. It wasn't just a gap in skill. It was an entirely different dimension of power. In a sickening spray of crimson, one of Bertel's arms was violently severed, spinning through the air. The gruesome sight finally snapped Kamara out of his shock, and he vaulted into the arena, screaming at Eugene to halt. Eugene cast a freezing side-eye at the intruder. Echoing the word stop with mocking indifference, he casually stepped back. "This death match isn't over," Lord Tiwan bellowed, throwing his arm out to physically block the execution. "I'll be damned before I just stand here and watch you butcher my little brother, Lord Eugene." With his horrific injuries, Bertel Tiwan was utterly broken, completely incapable of backing up his arrogance. The bloody duel had a clear and undisputed victor, Sir Eugene. Coughing up blood, Bertel shrieked in absolute denial. "No, I'm not done. I'll drag this bastard to hell myself." His veins popping with sheer fury, he kept thrashing. "Bertel," Kamara barked, glaring down at the pathetic sight. "Stand down. The match is already over. Take your punishment like a man and rot quietly in a cell." "Shut your mouth," Bertel snarled back like a rabid dog. "What exactly am I guilty of?" Kamara desperately yanked him backward, screaming. Completely unhinged, the younger brother squeezed the hilt of his weapon and roared, "Jan Eugene!" Blinded by utter madness, Bertel charged straight at him. "If it wasn't for you, if you had never crossed my path, my life wouldn't be this absolute nightmare." In the blink of an eye, a blinding, razor-sharp arc of energy slashed right past his face. A fraction of a second later, Eugene was already standing over him, staring down with dead eyes. Completely lost, Bertel, a terrifying numbness washed over him. Why can't I Horrifyingly, his severed legs were still planted firmly in the dirt, but the rest of Bertel's mutilated torso crashed heavily into the dust. Seeing his brother bisected, Kamara's eyes practically bulged out of his skull. "You really should have taken that final lifeline your brother threw you," Eugene muttered coldly. Flicking a gruesome trail of crimson off his blade, Eugene flawlessly sheathed his weapon, quietly muttering Bertel Tiwan's name one last time. The entire courtyard was suffocated by a dead, horrified silence. The onlookers, without sparing another glance at the carnage, the victor turned on his heel and strode away, leaving a crushing, heavy tension in his wake. Kamara's face twisted into a furious scowl, watching Eugene and his entourage disappear into the distance. As a bitter thought, "You absolute fool of a little brother." The scene then dramatically hard cuts to a bustling harbor where seagulls shrieked as they circled the bright blue sky. Eugene's footsteps echoed down the shadowy stone corridor when a phantom whisper brushed against his ear. "Any regrets?" "About what?" He shot back. "Oh, I do not know. Maybe that very first ghoul you forged used as a convenient little scapegoat, and then tossed out like common trash. Ring a bell?" Eugene's eyes narrowed as the memory flashed by. "It meant nothing," he scoffed. "That fragile wretch simply could not handle the raw strain of my curse. Dragging that dead weight around would have practically painted a massive target on my back, completely blowing my cover. It served its one and only purpose. It was just a disposable decoy for that pathetic duel we had earlier." "But wait, aren't Nightwalkers supposed to command sprawling armies of thralls?" she teased. "Servants are the ultimate flex of vampiric dominance, right?" Eugene's face remained like solid granite. Miriam let out a heavy, incredibly exasperated sigh. You seriously? Eugene's gloved hand gripped the heavy brass doorknob. Internally, he scoffed. Reanimating frail humans into ghouls just left him with a disgusting mess to mop up later. If he was ever going to turn someone, they had to be top-tier material. But the exact second he swung the heavy wooden doors open, a frantic voice. At the sudden mention of Lord Galfredic, the group looked thoroughly bewildered as they talked. Yeah, I caught wind of the absolute nightmare unfolding over there. Wait, exactly when did he cross the threshold? It has already been Catching the sudden movement at the doorway, Billmore whipped his head around and shouted his name. Beside him, Priscilla stiffened her eyes, going wide in genuine shock. Billmore sprinted over, practically buzzing with intense, nervous energy. My lord, it is a huge honor. Word on the street is you completely obliterated your dungeon run. Eugene gave a slow, incredibly composed nod. Yeah, it is genuinely good to cross paths. But let us cut right to the chase, Eugene demanded, his sharp gaze locking onto her. What exactly went down with Lord Galfredic? Taking a shaky breath, Priscilla spilled the terrifying story. Look, exactly 14 days ago, Galfredic joined the Grand. One minute we heard the thunderous gallop of his heavy warhorse right at the entrance. The next he vanished completely into the shadows, entirely by himself. We scoured every single inch all the way up to the mid-tier beast zones, but it was like he completely evaporated into thin air. Not a single. Eugene's brow deeply furrowed, the mental gears aggressively turning in his head as her dark revelation. There is only one logical explanation left. That reckless fool is completely... Without wasting another second, the scene aggressively snapped to Eugene furiously whipping his stallion's reins, plunging headfirst. Cut to the next scene. A set of heavy oak doors violently slammed open, and a highly imposing figure confidently stepped down. The elegantly dressed man flashed a brilliant, calculated smile. Welcome, Sir Yan Eugene. Tales of your terrifying power have echoed across the entire continent. I have got to admit you are a hell of a lot younger and significantly sharper looking than the... Eugene dropped into a stiff, perfectly measured, and deeply respectful bow. The honor is entirely mine, Prince Jevon. But the royal pleasantries were instantly and abruptly cut short by the prince. Right enough small talk. This dire crisis... With a sweeping dramatic gesture, Jevon Evergrow the Golden Boy and direct heir to the legendary Evergrow dynasty. The heavy mahogany doors firmly clicked shut. Let us be brutally honest here. It seems Lord Galfredic let his reckless, blind hunger for glory completely cloud his rational judgment. If he had actually managed to conquer that wretched pit, our family was fully prepared to reward him with a highly prestigious noble title. But instead of playing it smart, the complete maniac unexpectedly charged straight into... Eugene slowly cocked his head, his eyes narrowing in pure, genuine confusion. A solo run? What the hell? Jevon did not even flinch, his expression remaining a rigid mask of grim certainty. Here is the terrifying reality. Those forbidden lowest depths are restricted dead zones that our Evergrow bloodline has not been able to breach in over a solid century. That cursed, pitch-black abyss is exclusively known as the absolute domain of the Dungeon Lord. A rare flicker of genuine shock flashed right across Eugene's normally stoic face. Slouching disrespectfully over in the dark corner, Lou Jade finally chimed in with an incredibly slow, lazy drawl. That monstrous freak does not just crash down there. Resting his heavy chin squarely on his knuckles, a wicked, absolutely punchable... Galfredic's dangerously massive ego dragged all of us straight into a catastrophic nightmare. Pushing off the wall, the arrogant warrior strolled right into the center of the room. Jevon politely gestured right toward the imposing man. Allow me to formally introduce the premier apex predator of our lands, our guardian knight, Sir Lou Jade. He was the actual elite commander, leading the vanguard forces right alongside that reckless idiot Galfredic during the deadly raid. Lou Jade offered a lazy, highly casual salute. Nice to finally meet the living legend. I heard you completely humiliated Galfredic in a vicious one-on-one duel. Honestly, I think you and I share a very interesting dynamic. I actually claimed the crown at the Evergrow tournament, which means I'm the guy who absolutely crushed Galfredic in the arena. So we actually share some common ground, Lou Jace bragged. Taking down Galfredic, how incredibly amusing, Eugene replied, his voice dripping with dry sarcasm. Eugene's stone-cold glare violently clashed. Sensing the heavy tension, Jevon quickly stepped in to smooth things over. Listen, losing a brilliant talent like Galferdic is a massive blow to our side, too. I want to offer my deepest, most sincere apologies regarding this whole horrifying mess, Sir Eugene. He gestured toward Eugene, his tone suddenly growing a bit hesitant and cautious. Rumor around here has it that you and Galferdic shared a remarkably tight bond, is that right? A sudden annoying memory of Galferdic flashing a cheeky wink crossed Eugene's mind. Yeah, we were completely inseparable, he muttered, sounding emotionally exhausted. Well, you could definitely call it something like that, he thought bitterly to him. Jevon sank into the armchair, right across from him. You went out of your way to help him, precisely because you guys were so tight. Weren't you listening carefully? For over a century, our family has launched countless, brutal expeditions to conquer the upper levels. But every single attempt has ended the exact same way, with our people vanishing without a single... Because of that dark history, we established a strict protocol. If an explorer remains completely off the grid for over a month, we pull the plug on the search, and if the horrifying reality finally sank in. It had already been a grueling 3 weeks since Galferdic slipped into the shadows. If they didn't track him down within the next 7 days, Eugene froze in his track. Pure panic surging through his veins, Eugene leaped from his seat. Then I need to head out right this second. But Jevon frantically threw his hand up to block him. Hold on, I totally get why you're freaking out. But that dungeon is a terrifying death trap. You cannot just charge in blindly. He held up 3 fingers, his gaze deadly serious. Give us 3 days. In just 3 days, Lou Jace and I will assemble a heavy-hitting elite strike team. Eugene slowly turned back, silently absorbing the grim plan. Until then, you need to rest up and get your strength back to 100%. A dark, heavy shadow fell across Eugene's face as he forced the words out. Jevon quickly added, "Oh, one last detail. We recently hired a pretty capable mage. We're going to assign him to your squad. He should come in incredibly handy." Suddenly, Miriam materialized beside them, thoughtfully stroking her chin. Wait, so this outsider mage is actually teaming up with... honestly, that obnoxious, pointy-headed jerk is completely useless. Miriam violently barked out, instantly grabbing his attention. Listen, the guy might strut around like an arrogant peacock, but his magical firepower is absolutely no joke. Can you even believe this garbage? I'm half tempted to dump a freezing bucket of water right over his stuck-up nose just to... Eugene completely tuned out the complaining, keeping his head down, as the gears in his mind furiously turned. The red flags were piling up rapidly. A sudden, crystal-clear vision of the past ripped through his thoughts, taking him right back to his final... Cat's Evergrow is actually going to grant me a fancy noble title for my massive achievements on this mission. So won't you tag along with me, man? We can totally split all that glorious loot right down the middle. Snapping violently back to reality, Eugene narrowed his eyes. If he was genuinely guaranteed a noble title, that completely explains why he fought so... So why in the world did they violently pivot their entire strategy? Plus, from everything I know about the guy, he definitely isn't the type to throw his life away over some reckless, spur-of-the-moment bloodlust for hunting monsters. Hey, look, over there! A random voice in the bustling crowd suddenly shrieked. But Eugene, trapped deep inside his own chaotic thoughts, completely blocked the noise out. Even if he was rushing, he definitely would have built an elite squad to push forward safely, he reasoned. Suddenly, a deafening chant rippled. Misha is coming. Misha is coming. Up ahead, a ragged old man stood towering over the terrified crowd. When the crimson shadow completely swallows the moon, the goddess of victory will unleash her savage wrath. Her true form will rip this fragile world to absolute shreds. Pure panic exploded through the townspeople, violently shoving and trampling each other in the chaos. Eugene instantly realized the nightmare had already begun. Vicious earthquakes, rumbling out from the dungeon, had already... And just recently a ridiculously skilled knight vanished without a trace in there too, Miriam muttered suddenly, pointing her finger toward the screaming crowd. Wait a second. Isn't that the pompous, pointy-headed guy they were just raving about? The crazed old man on the stage shrieked at the top of his lungs, "Spill the blood of a calf right at the gate, and offer its flesh up as a desperate tribute." That is the absolutely only way to soothe Misha's furious rage, and beg her to spare our blood-soaked waste. A terrifying buzz of dread infected the mob below. Oh my God, what are we supposed to do? A fanatical cult. Miriam's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. What kind of twisted demonic gibberish is that? She whispered. Eugene scowled, his expression. There's a deeply unsettling vibe choking this entire village. A frantic youth, aggressively shoving pamphlets into people's hands, marched right up to Eugene and bellowed, "The heavens are raging. Bow down and repent while you still can." Eugene snatched the crinkled flyer, his eyes scanning the bold ink. Tremors near the labyrinth are wiping out the savage beasts. Did a section of the maze cave in, unleashing those nightmares into the wild? And if that happened? Eugene spun on his heel. Miriam, make a beeline for the labyrinth, move. Startled by his sudden outburst, she blinked. Wait, what? Why the massive rush, boss? Suddenly, a stranger lurking in the shadows stepped up, flashing a wicked smirk. Waiting 3 days is a total waste of time. We will hunt him down ourselves. Oh yeah, we are going to wipe them entirely off the map. The shady figure casually strolled past Eugene, leaning in to chuckle menacingly right against his... Well, I definitely did not plan on bumping into a bloodsucker in a place. The words hit Eugene like a physical blow. He violently whipped his head around, his gaze piercing the stranger. The mysterious individual keeping the lower half of their face buried beneath a thick scarf, smoothly carried on. Word around here is that the Holy Crusaders wiped practically every last vampire off the face of this continent. Am I wrong? Eugene completely froze, his muscles locking up tight. How dare these creatures strut around like absolute royalty in the middle of the day? Moving like lightning, Eugene snatched the cloaked figure by the collar and violently hauled her straight into a pitch-black alleyway. Meanwhile, the paranoid villagers continued murmuring their crazy gossip. The savior is arriving. Put your faith in the divine. He slammed her ruthlessly against the brick wall, knocking the wind out of her as she swallowed a sharp groan of agony. Deep crimson light flared in Eugene's eyes through the heavy shadows. Spill your identity. Right now. How the hell did you clock me? He hissed viciously. Talk fast, or I am snapping your neck. He hoisted her off the ground. She flailed wildly, gasping. Hold on, drop me, and I will confess everything. Cold sweat dripped down her pale face. Struggling desperately for air, she croaked out, I belong. The absolute split second he processed her confession, the lethal glare radiating from his eyes flickered out to the blood sect. I am a sorceress. Miriam hovered nearby, crossing her arms, with a slight head tilt. That specific title rang a distinct bell in her mind. Suddenly her jaw dropped, and she shrieked at the top of her lungs. Miriam frantically darted forward, throwing her hands up. Boss, wait. Do not snap her neck or you are going to botch this whole mission. Her desperate screaming made Eugene snap his head toward her. She is a spellcaster. Miriam wildly flailed her arms to get his attention. Still waving frantically, Miriam blurted out, She is from the Romary clan. That is an ancient bloodline of magicians completely devoted to the Nightwalkers. He glanced back, completely unaware that his grip was tightening like a vice around her throat. Devoted to who exactly? Letting out a pathetic squeak, the poor girl instantly passed out cold. A heavy, awkward silence filled the alleyway. Well, you knocked her out, Miriam deadpan. The camera cuts. The sorceress was now slumped in a quiet room, aggressively rubbing her bruised windpipe and hacking violently. Are you insane? Who chokes someone out before asking questions? How am I supposed to confess while I am suffocating? Eugene just stared off toward the bustling village outside. Yeah, my bad. Miriam leaped up, totally exasperated. Ugh, what a snappy attitude on this chick. The girl weakly lifted a hand to muffle her lingering coughs. Let's try this again. Allow me to properly introduce myself. The name is Cyranoa Romary. I belong to the Romary faction, loyal servants to the bloodline. Our people possess a unique radar to spot your kind instantly. It is an absolute privilege to cross paths with a creature of the night such as yourself. I was actually hunting for Lord Eugene, operating under direct orders from Prince Jevon. Hearing this, Eugene internally clicked the pieces together. So this is the sorceress that Jevon was hyping up. Serenoa hesitated, stumbling over her words. The prince mentioned that you and Gal Frederick were basically thick as thieves. Is that accurate? Eugene completely clammed up, his jaw clenched tight. That royal blabbermouth. The second I track him down, I am going to permanently zip his lips. Giving a polite nod, she nervously avoided his intense gaze. I was actually embedded with the strike team that purged the labyrinth, right before he vanished. Miriam stopped dead in her tracks. Eugene narrowed his glowing eyes. Paint me a picture. Tell me exactly what went down that. Romary stared at the floor, her gaze heavy with guilt. Yeah, I was desperate for monster drops. That is why I signed up for Count Evergrow's expedition. The Evergrow Labyrinth is a known death trap, but hunters have scoured it for a century. We thought every single floor was totally swept clean, except for the absolute peak people wandered in pretty. But the moment we ventured deeper, the stone floors violently convulsed. Soldiers started screaming, "Brace yourselves, earthquake." Out of nowhere, a massive shockwave ripped through the air, and the entire cavern buckled. And then the solid rock beneath my boots just vanished, right as gravity dragged me into the void. A hand lunged out and locked onto my arm. It was Lord Galfredic. He had been guarding our blind spot. He yanked me to safety, only to plummet straight into the pitch-black chasm himself. Thanks to his sacrifice, I managed to survive the collapse, eventually waking up on the surface. The surviving troops immediately started pointing fingers, yelling, "What kind?" The entire squad pinned the blame on Lord Galfredic. They were totally convinced he cracked open. He traded his life for mine. The absolute least I could do was track you down and tell you the truth, Sir Eugene. After all, Eugene was his most loyal comrade. Little did she know this noble knight was actually a terrifying vampire. Eugene tilted his gaze upward, his mind racing. So Prince Jevon's little story was a complete fabrication. He narrowed his crimson eyes, pondering deeply. Did that royal brat intentionally play me? Or was he fed guard? Serenoa's trembling voice snapped him back to reality. But right before the dust settled, I caught a glimpse of something. Down in the crushing depths where Galfredic vanished, there was a massive, eerie mural of a single giant eye. Eugene furrowed his brow. That specific detail struck a nerve, prompting him to press her for answers. She nodded frantically. Yes, Sir Eugene. Do you happen to have that flyer, those crazy fanatics? A grim shadow fell over his face as he instantly pictured the grotesque symbol inked on the parchment. That drawing. It was a perfect match to the nightmare I saw at the bottom of the pit. Deep within a hidden cavern, a horde of zealots screamed in manic unison. Praise him! Glorify his name. The almighty Mesher is finally coming down to us. Sacrifice your flesh, and he alone will drag us from this hell and grant us true salvation. A rogue fanatic ripped off his dark hood, flashing a twisted, bloodthirsty smirk. Our master is waking up. Back on the surface, scouts confirmed the rations were packed, while a massive brigade of hired blades and armored knights fell into formation. The chaotic chatter swelled into a battle roar. All right, let us move out. The expedition starts now. Hey, Sir Eugene, what is on your mind? Are you thrilled to finally rip through this death trap? The mercenaries jeered, ruthlessly joking that they just prayed they would not be hauling any mangled corpse. Yeah, that guy is way too stubborn to die easily. A mercenary roared with booming. It was obvious that Galfredic commanded some serious, unbreakable respect. Eugene watched the noisy crowd in dead silence. Deep down, he was but now that he knew his friend's tragic fall was no mere accident, he had to keep a You sat around for 3 weeks just to see me. What is another 3 days of waiting, huh? Right at that very second, Galfredic suddenly emerged from the crowd, leading a whole group straight toward them. Blessings upon you, Sir Eugene. We are the elite crusaders, standing beside a profoundly devout and righteous warrior like yourself is our absolute privilege. Your selfless courage to dive right into danger for the innocent has truly touched our souls. For the glory of the divine, let us... Miriam snickered from the sidelines, mocking him. A blood-sucking vampire lord, practically radiating holy faith. Hilarious. Eugene just stood there, totally frozen in pure disbelief. Right. Just do your best out there. Catching him off guard, a fellow comrade burst into a roaring laugh. Man, those Templars are strictly bound to the heavens. They almost never fanboy over a solo swordsman like that. Honestly, Sir Eugene, you might just get crowned a divine paladin at this rate. Eugene's face twisted into a fierce scowl. A vampire, parading as a holy paladin. Beside him, Eugene locked his glowing crimson eyes onto the man, maintaining a dead silent, piercing glare. The massive gates groaned open, revealing a dark, inviting maw that beckoned them. Breaking the tension, Eugene's voice was deadpan. Step out here for a sec. The man gave a stiff nod. Yes, sir. Orders echoed through the ranks. All right, people, catch your breath here, but keep your heads on a swivel. Grab some water and get right back to your posts. Move. Miriam gazed around, her eyes practically shining with absolute awe. Master, this place is absolutely breathtaking. Eugene scanned their surroundings, his mind racing. Yeah, this is totally different from any dungeon I've ever raided. It's completely artificial. Just enough basic resources to survive, and the monsters are perfectly spaced out. Honestly, if things hit the fan, a guy could actually hunker down in this maze and scrape by for days. Suddenly, Lugates piped up with a booming voice. Man, talk about the perfect little hideout for a villain, wouldn't you agree? You've got some serious skills, Eugene. We made it all the way down here without losing a single soul. Lugates rubbed his chin casually, wondering out loud just how much further they had to trek to find where Galfredick vanished. A nasty sneer twisted his face. Hold your horses. You claimed you trusted the guy, right? Eugene didn't say a word. He just shot Lugates a death glare so vicious it could have slashed right through his windpipe. Unfazed Lugates smirked, oozing arrogance. But at this exact moment, I'm the one you need to put your faith in. Like I told you before, us Evergrove locals know every single deadly trap wired into this twisted maze. Feigning innocence, he let out a dark, mocking chuckle. So why do people still drop dead every time we venture down here? No big deal, really. Think of them as necessary little sacrifices so the rest of us make it out alive. A chill ran down Eugene's spine at that twisted logic, right as they crossed the threshold into the labyrinth. Formations of holy knights from the abbey fanned out aggressively, scouting the treacherous terrain ahead. Without warning, the solid stone beneath their boots began to violently tremble. Earthquake! Someone screamed. But Lugates roared over the panic. Brace yourselves, the maze is literally shifting its layout. Eugene shot him a look of pure murder. Unfazed Lugates jabbed a finger at a crumbling rock face. Right there, massive slabs of stone ground together as the surrounding wall. The shady guide quickly pitched his reckless plan. Dive straight through the shifting rubble to catch a shortcut to the upper floor. Dust and debris choked the air as terrified knights screamed out. Sir Eugene, the whole cavern is collapsing. Yet, amid the absolute chaos, Lugates stood perfectly still, his smug face practically laughing in the face of death. Eugene snapped his head toward the guide, eyes wide, with furious confusion. What the hell do you mean a shortcut? A sickeningly evil grin stretched across the traitor's face as the heavy stone passageway slammed shut between them. Right before the gap completely vanished, Lugates threw out one last mocking comment about the deadly trap Eugene was now stuck in. Massive hidden gears began to grind, echoing with a horrifying metallic screech that pierced the cavern. Swirling vortexes of energy erupted all around Eugene, making the heavy air almost impossible to breathe. A knight gasped in confusion. Eugene's brow twisted into a fierce scowl. No way. This is definitely no natural earthquake. That bastard set us up. We just walked blind right into his customized death trap. But what the hell is his endgame here? Suddenly Sereno Aromeri shrieked in absolute terror, pointing a trembling finger. Look! Over there! Her face drained of all color, eyes bulging as she stared at the horrific nightmare unfolding in the shadows. Eugene froze in pure shock. Suspended from a massive wooden crossbeam was a violently bruised, blood-soaked body. Galfredick, burning rage ignited in his chest. Eugene exploded off the ground, rocketing straight toward his battered comrade. The sight of his friend's pale, brutally starved body chained to the wood felt like a literal dagger to his heart. Staring at that emaciated, lifeless shell hanging from the rafters absolutely tore him apart from the inside. His crimson eyes narrowed with desperate focus. He's still breathing. If I cut him down right now, he might just make it. Out of nowhere, Miriam frantically tugged his sleeve, her voice trembling. Master, something is... I've been sensing this creeping, unnatural energy practically boiling up from deep beneath us. Without warning, a violent, supernatural gale ripped through the cavern, nearly throwing the entire squad off their feet. Serenoa shielded her face, staring into the pitch-black abyss in sheer disbelief. What on earth? Where is this storm? A sinister crimson sphere materialized in the empty void above, its eerie glow reflected in a pair of savage eyes, piercing through the chaotic gloom. In that split second, the dragon unleashed a putrid torrent of blood-red magic, choking the battlefield in a sickening metallic stench. Massive limbs violently churned the earth beneath them, sending catastrophic tremors ripping across the entire war zone. Eugene and Serenoa could only stare in pure disbelief as this apocalyptic nightmare unfolded. The color completely drained from her face, as a terrified shriek escaped her lungs. "It's a minotaur!" Eugene roared over the chaos, desperately ordering Serenoa Romery to guard Galfredic with her life. Flexing its raw, catastrophic power, the monster completely shattered the terrain, launching massive boulders into the sky like pebbles. Eugene exploded into a blistering sprint, the explosive crunch of his boots tearing up the earth, echoing like thunder. Pushing his agility to the absolute limit, he barely sidestepped the creature's lethal, bone-crushing swipe. His piercing gaze locked onto the hulking behemoth, rapidly analyzing every tiny shift in its lethal combat stance. Enraged, the beast detonated a devastating shockwave of scorching magic, violently blasting Eugene backward across the dirt. The sheer impact tossed him helplessly into the sky like a broken... An agonizing grunt escaped his lips, while the sheer, untamed shockwave caught Serenoa Romery, violently throwing her off her feet as well. Unfazed, the colossal minotaur hoisted a gigantic, nightmarish greatsword, pulsating with a blinding, lethal aura. The monstrous titan, wielding such a catastrophic weapon, radiated an absolutely suffocating, bloodthirsty presence. Digging his fingers into the stone wall to break his momentum, Eugene hollered, "Hold on! What the hell are you doing?" The beast's dead crimson pupils flared to life, locking onto him with terrifying, murderous intent. With one merciless, earth-shattering overhead swing, the giant blade cleaved the ground in two, violently shaking the entire cavern. In a moment of absolute paralyzing horror, the devastating blow completely obliterated the wooden beam, shattering Galfredic's helpless body strapped right to it. Staring at the horrific carnage unfolding right in front of him, Eugene's expression... He ground his teeth together, his jaw trembling with sheer, unadulterated fury. Channeling every ounce of power he had left, he kicked off the stone wall and launched himself forward like a human missile. He desperately stretched his arm out through the debris fighting to grab hold of Galfredic. A burning, ruthless determination flashed in his eyes. He was going to end this nightmare, right here, right now. But out of nowhere, a shimmering magic barricade materialized, abruptly stopping him dead in his tracks. His features twisted in pure rage as he barked, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Serenoa Romery kept her voice unnervingly calm, simply replying, "Sir Eugene, that is a minotaur. It is an apex predator, one of the absolute highest tier." She didn't mince words, adding coldly, "Even a high-ranking vampire wouldn't stand a chance out there." Instantly, Eugene flashed his razor-sharp fangs, his pupils violently glowing with pure predatory bloodlust. He aggressively leveled his blade inches from her face before forcefully shoving it away in absolute disgust. "You arrogant fool!" he snarled. Trembling under his lethal gaze, Serenoa quickly stammered, "But I simply cannot stand aside and watch our strongest vampire throw his life away on a suicide mission, charging headfirst at a beast of that caliber. Your odds of survival are practically zero. If you genuinely want to pull Sir Galfredic out of this alive, you have to think with a cool head. But why the hell is there a minotaur here in the first place? Is this death maze actually this massive? I swore they said this zone only had Cyclops. Right in the middle of their heated clash, the massive stone door behind them slowly began to creak open. A sudden beam of harsh light washed over the two, accompanied by a highly obnoxious, mocking voice. Well, well, color me shocked. You only survived thanks to Luggets. I honestly thought you were nothing more than a quirky illusion mage. Catching everyone off guard, his piercing eyes gleamed as a deeply infuriating, wicked smirk stretched across his face. Bursting into a maniacal fit of laughter, Lugates clapped his hands. Oh wow, I seriously never expected that mage to throw down a high-tier earth spell like that. Come on now, you never actually planned on saving Galfordic, did you? He sneered. Cyranoa quickly in a blinding flash, Eugene's massive, heavily muscled arm shot out violently, seizing Lugates by the throat. So it was you all along, you bat. His eyes narrowed into deadly slits. The monster who beat Galfordic to a bloody pulp just let out a sick chuckle. Well, well, Sir Eugene clearly missed his buddy, so I played matchmaker. Unlike the usual trash I deal with, you've got zero manners. Lord Lujace's fingers crept around Eugene's shaking forearm, but then his mocking stare snapped to the side, completely paralyzed. Eugene instantly wrenched his wrist free. Cyranoa gasped horror, flashing across her face as she screamed. Eugene barked. Lujace's palm was just radiating a sick purple aura. What the hell was hiding under there? Serene Noah immediately pieced it together. That glowing mark. It's a blatant energy-leeching curse. Centuries ago, people used it to share aura with each other. But once they started draining monstrous entities, the higher-ups slapped a total ban on it. Lujace scoffed, cutting her off. Forbidden, please. That's just a pathetic excuse for them to hoard all the mana. I'll never grasp why we were singled out. When pure ruin drowns this world, only the gods' favorites will crawl out alive. Eugene snapped back, wiping the smug grin right off Lujace's face. So you leeched off some freakish entity to crush Galfordic, then had the nerve to flex it as your own strength before me? Fine. Let me beat some reality into you. An explosive wave of blood-red aura erupted from his core, violently clashing against the enemy's crushing pressure. Sereno shuddered violently. This spiritual pressure is absolutely suffocating. How the hell is a run-of-the-mill bloodsucker generating this much raw malice? Meanwhile, Lujace was practically dripping with sheer arrogance. He whipped his arm forward, launching a lethal palm strike straight at Eugene. A calculated, brutal counter. His palms slammed squarely against Eugene's ribcage. The cursed brand on his knuckles flared bright. Too bad for you, I have zero intention of backing down. The shockwave launched both Eugene and Cyranoa straight into the air. Lujace roared with laughter. I warned you I own every single deadly trap in this maze. His irises burned with a sinister light as he smirked. Drown in the abyss. Eugene gritted his teeth, shouting a frantic warning as lethal shadows surged toward them. Out of nowhere, a blinding runic array ignited right under Cyranoa's boots. Using the momentum, Eugene violently twisted his body midair. He launched himself directly at Lujace, as his eyes locked onto the target like a starving predator. His knuckles turned white as he squeezed his broadsword's hilt. The fear was gone. Only pure, unadulterated killing intent remained. The razor-sharp steel carved a brutal gash right across the vampire's cheek. Lujace's eyes flicked downward, feeling the hot trail of blood drip from his own flesh. But a split second later, a loud crack echoed as Eugene's blade shattered into pieces. I knew he was tough, Lujace thought, but that strike was on a totally different level. If I fight this monster in a straight-up brawl, I might actually lose. Thank the gods I kept Galfordic breathing to use as bait. It was the perfect play. Finally, the ultimate sacrifice is primed and ready. Around them, the intricate runic barriers began crumbling into dust. Eugene was completely out of mana, unable to trace a single new spell. Cyranoa scrambled backward. Hold up! Where the hell are you going? She was totally losing her mind as the chaos spiraled out of control. Sprinting for her life, she cursed under her breath. What kind of sick illusion is this? I should have just played dumb and walked away. Why did I drag myself into this suicide mission? But mid-stride, her boots skidded to a halt. As she stared totally paralyzed, shadows crossed her face as she pulled Galfredic's battered body into a desperate embrace. "Can you pull him through?" he demanded. Cyranoa flinched, her voice trembling. Healing magic isn't exactly my forte." Eugene's voice cut through the air like ice. "That is not the answer I'm looking for." Terror choked her throat, leaving her unable to meet his furious gaze. Without warning, a whirlpool of blood-red water erupted beneath them. Miriam screamed over the deafening roar. Master, I've scoured the perimeter. We're completely boxed in. There's no way out." Eugene stated with lethal certainty that these labyrinth walls were entirely indestructible. "We're completely trapped," he muttered. "This chamber is a literal boss arena, buried at the absolute dead end of the maze." Miriam's voice dropped, laced with heavy dread. "Master, there is something else you need to know. This entire cavern is practically drowning in aquatic energy. Yet, even as a water spirit, I cannot manipulate a single drop." The spirit locked its glowing eyes dead ahead, heavily fixating on that sinister, pooling liquid. It visibly recoiled, shrinking back, as it frantically scanned the gloomy cavern. Those luminescent orbs embedded in the cavern walls. Were they the exact same horrific eyes Cyrano Aramari had witnessed buried underground? Eugene demanded to know why it couldn't control the flow. The spirit shuddered. "By the laws of nature, I can only bend the blood of the deceased, which means whoever is bleeding is still very much alive." Right on cue, an overwhelming, murderous aura surged from the abyssal depths. An obsidian monstrosity clawed its way upward, hauling its grotesque, towering mass out of the bloody surf. Eugene planted his feet, totally unflinching, as the Titan cast a massive shadow over them. Cyrano Aramari, desperately pumping mana into Galfredic's fading body, froze in absolute horror. "Miriam!" Eugene roared. "Tear open a path out of here, whatever it takes." The spirit bowed. "Consider it done, master." Towering right before them stood a colossal, nightmarish demon lord. A heavy scowl etched across his face as he glanced back at the paralyzed, helpless Galfredic. His piercing eyes snapped back to the massive threat. He had to annihilate this behemoth first. Without a second thought, he exploded into a dead sprint. The demon lord retaliated, hoisting a gargantuan, shadowy fist high into the cavern air. Embracing the absolute chaos, Eugene pushed aside all hesitation. Grinding his teeth, he vaulted skyward with terrifying speed. He hurtled right across the surface of the bloody lake, driving his blade viciously toward the monster's thick hide. But Eugene suddenly froze in midair. He stared in disbelief as his weapon violently shattered into countless metallic shards. The fiend unhinged its monstrous jaws. In a blinding flash, a destructive beam erupted from the beast's arm, slamming squarely into Eugene and blasting him across the cavern. Fresh trails of his own blood instantly dissolved into the crimson surf. Eugene violently slammed his boots down, skidding to a halt as he whipped his head around. His eyes burned with deadly focus. Clenching his jaw tightly, he harnessed his backward momentum to launch himself skyward once again. His lightning-fast figure practically blended in with the torrential red waves. He darted with supernatural grace, zigzagging unpredictably to dodge incoming strikes. But the towering demon lord continued its relentless, apocalyptic rampage. Eugene scowled down at his ruined hilt. A basic steel weapon wouldn't even dent that monstrosity's armor. But suddenly, a dormant energy bled from his gauntlets, and twisting scarlet veins gradually crept up, completely enveloping the shattered blade. A lethal, menacing glare locked onto his target as he dropped into an offensive combat stance. "This improvised weapon will have to do for now," he muttered under his breath. Unblinking, he kept his fiery gaze glued to the towering beast. His leg muscles coiled like springs before he rocketed away from his blind spot. A grim shadow crossed his face as his hawk-like eyes furiously mapped out the battlefield. He pirouetted with deadly precision, banking sharply mid-stride to launch a devastating counter-assault. Without warning, his entire body seized up, struck by an agonizing, paralyzing surge of pain. The gargantuan fiend standing directly in his path proved to be an almost insurmountable nightmare. It unleashed a relentless, crushing barrage of deadly strikes against the cornered warrior. The brutal impact launched him backward, violently shattering the solid stone wall. Torrents of ominous purple aura surged entirely, swallowing the demon lord's massive frame. Desperate Serenua poured every ounce of her magical energy into the unconscious Gelfredic. Her panic spiked as she glanced up. "Lord Gelfredic, please, snap out of it. Your friend is about to die." Through the agonizing pain, Eugene clawed at the rubble. Desperately forcing himself, crimson dripped down his bruised cheek. This wasn't just any beast. Its raw power was absolutely monstrous. The creature's eyes ignited with pure, unadulterated malice. Without warning, the monstrosity extended its colossal arm, preparing a devastating strike. Fixating on its prey, that massive hand charged up for the ultimate kill. Eugene watched, completely paralyzed. Those blinding demonic eyes flared wildly, tracking their every move. A blistering beam of crimson energy ripped through the space between them. In a split second, Eugene threw himself into the line of fire, shielding Serenua from the lethal blast. She screamed in absolute horror at the unfolding carnage. "Lord Eugene!" "No!" Shadows cast over his grimacing face. He fought to keep his chin up, hacking and gasping for a sliver of oxygen. Violent shivers racked his broken body. It was that exact same crushing despair that had plagued his nightmares for decades. The colossal hand bore down again, relentlessly crushing everything beneath its... Even so, Eugene stared up, without a single ounce of fear in his eyes. But why did this agony burn so much deeper than that fateful day? His entire body felt like it was sinking, completely swallowed by dark, freezing water. Thick, warm blood poured endlessly from his gruesome wounds, painting his skin crimson. Through his blurring vision, he could only see Serenua's terrified, weeping face and Gelfredic's lifeless form. Damn it! Why wasn't that stubborn bastard waking up? Then, a faint flutter. Gelfredic's eyelids slowly began to peel. His gaze snapped sharply to Eugene, his pupils dilating in pure, utter shock at the horrific sight.